Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Kami sends Naruto to fairy tale. Before I start, please support for more amazing content, and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by FanFiction 6669 and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. Chapter 1: The End of This World. In a nondescript area, which was formerly a land filled with trees and vegetation but was reduced to an uneven bare scar on the earth, two men with their own ambitions for the world gazed in silence at the sight before them. They stood on top of a being which had a grotesquely bloated, round body and seemed to crawl on its belly, while branch-like spiky protrusions grew out of its back at a straight angle. It had a singular unique eye, taking up most of its head, 4 concentric circles with 6 tomo in the 2 circles closest to the pupil. It also had a wide, cavernous mouth with multiple rows of sharp, pointed teeth, as well as a spiked chin. It was possibly the largest being in the world, the source of all chakra, but is also the progenitor of everything that exists in this world, the Aim no Hitatsu no Kami, the one-eyed god or the Jubi. The man on the left peered over the land, his mismatched eyes narrowing in barely concealed frustration. He wore a pair of black pants and gloves, with a white, presumed form-fitting shirt underneath. Over this he wore a purple, high-collared, long-sleeved mantle that split down the lower half and had the Uchiha crest on the back, though the left sleeve had been all but torn off. Around his waist he wore a simple, light purple obi and a belt. His left eye had a ripple-like pattern which spread over the eyeballs, with light purple irides and sclerae. His right eye, on the other hand, was a stunning red with a black design reminiscent of a pinwheel in the center. This man was Uchiha Obito, the man responsible for the 4th Great Shinobi War. The second man merely crossed his arms, his bored look remaining on his visage. He was a tall, fair-skinned man with spiky, black hair that had a slight, blue tint to it. By adulthood, his hair had grown to waist length with shoulder-length bangs framing the sides of his face, covering his right eye entirely. Although still relatively young, more prominent creases had developed under each of his eyes. In most cases, his attire took the form of the standard shinobi dress of a previous era, consisting of bright red traditional armor, similar to that of samurai, worn over a simple black suit. This armor was constructed from numerous metal plates, formed into multiple protective guards along his body, in particular, chest, waist, shoulders, and thighs. Unusually, his chest plate left his back entirely exposed, presumably so as to better display his clan's crest. This clothing was accompanied by boots and gloves. Strapped to his back, he carried a crimson gunbai with black trimmings and black tomo, connected to a black chain that runs up his right sleeve. His Rinnegan eyes surveyed the scene before him with amusement. His name was Uchiha Madara. Standing several meters away from them were the entire allied shinobi forces, minus the 5 kage of course. Standing in the center of the group of distinguished shinobi were 3 battle-worn leaf shinobi, all who were gathering their second wind for the inevitable clash against the Uchihas. The most notable one of them all stood proudly with a determined expression on his face, his fingers in a cross sign while his eyes bore into Madara's disinterested ones. He had ocean blue eyes and blonde, spiky hair. He wore an orange and black jumpsuit with black sandals as well as a black headband. He also had 3 whisker marks on his face which greatly resembled that of a cat or fox. He switched his gaze to Obito and called out, "You think we're still a disorganized group? We are the Shinobi Alliance. Keep it in mind." Obito said nothing, choosing to just stare at them with impassiveness. After a few moments of staring at them, he finally spoke his words. "It matters not whether you are 1,000 or 100,000, none of you can hope to compare with the power of the Jubi. The Eye of the Moon plan will be fulfilled one way or another." The Jubi roared in agreement, forcing all the allied shinobi to the ground while the earth trembled beneath at the sounds of its creator. Naruto grit his teeth as he quickly staggered to his feet, racking his brain on what they could use to defeat the 2 Uchihas. "Kurama, how much longer until you can come back out?" he questioned, absently wiping sweat from his forehead. Inside the seal, the Kyubi no Kurama's closed eyes gained a minor tick mark as he sat in a meditative posture. "I won't be able to merge ourselves together for at least another 5 minutes or so. Just try and hang on until I can rejoin the fight," he ordered. "Gotcha." Concentrating on his chakra once more, Naruto wearily summoned 2 kage bunshins beside him. He turned to the shinobi behind him, the beginnings of an idea stirring in his mind. "Ino," she snapped to attention immediately, ready to hear his plan. "Do you think you and Hinata can manage to control them again? I need just 2 seconds to pull this off." The seriousness in his voice reflected how much he needed this part of his plan to work. "Hi, though I doubt that it'll be as easy as it was before." Nodding his head, he shifted to the other shinobi. "Anyone with an A-rank katan jutsu up their sleeves?" A chorus of "hi" answered his question. "Alright, here's what we're gonna try." With Madara and Obito, the former was ever so subtly forming the hand seals he had mastered over his long life to obtain more power. The ninpo, Duka no Jutsu, Ninja Release, Assimilation Jutsu, was a jutsu he had initially started creating with his brother Izuna. The concept of the jutsu was for the user to selectively withdraw certain desirable traits from the enemy shinobi and absorb them into the user's body. It had originally been their plan to find a way to restore Izuna's eyes, but he had perished on the battlefield the next day. Ever since his defeat at the hands of Senju Hashirama in the Valley of the End, he had been forced to rely much more than he pleased on the Duka no Jutsu in order to rejuvenate his life force when he found his body reaching its limit. However, this time, his targets were the last two Jinchuriki, Naruto and Killer Bee. Despite the fact that the Jubi had been successfully revived, Madara wanted more. He wasn't content with becoming the Jinchuriki of an incomplete Bijou, he wanted to be the shinobi who would finally surpass the Sage of Six Paths himself. With the Duka no Jutsu, he could possibly assimilate both of them into the Jubi and hopefully trigger a reaction in the one-eyed god to become complete. I must hurry and seal the last pieces into the Jubi before Obito starts getting impatient once more. Why couldn't he just stick to the plan we had and gather all the Bijou before he resurrected the Jubi? Stopping on the last seal, Madara was about to shout his jutsu for the allied forces to hear but was stopped by the sudden bombardment of jutsu. Dragons of flame, boulders of varying sizes, water bullets from a particular cluster, wind blades and tornadoes flying around in different directions, and even the occasional streak of lightning could be seen hurtling towards the two of them. Using his link to the Bijou, Madara concentrated as the Jubi opened its shark-like mouth. Negative white energy and positive black energy formed at incredible speeds, already being swallowed by the beast as it solidified into a condensed ball of chakra. Madara smirked as he readied the tailed beast's skill. Bijou Raiza. Tailed beast laser. The attack was fired at an intensity that took the shinobi forces completely by surprise, judging their shocked faces and rapid paling. The dense mass of chakra had easily swallowed their attacks, cutting a deep trench through the earth as it headed towards them. Katon/Futon, Goryoka no Jutsu/Cho Urama Bijou Raizen Shuriken. Came the cry of Naruto and a majority of the shinobi force. It was at that moment, when the devastating abruptly disappeared into strands of chakra, that a massive dragon head erupted from the dust cloud that had been kicked up by the Bijou Raiza, a large orb of black chakra surrounded by four large points resembling a Fuma Shuriken. Obito sent a glare towards the elder Uchiha. Enough showing off, let's get the project started already. Facing the approaching attack, Obito attempted to send it into another dimension using his Kamui, but, to his disbelief, the warping barrier he expected to see was not forming at all. Stealing a glance towards Kakashi, he noted with slight annoyance that he was indeed interfering with his activation of Kamui. How is he gaining knowledge on the usage of Kamui so quickly? Before, he could only teleport objects into a separate dimension, but now he's even capable of stopping Kamui from taking place. Madara paid no mind to the incoming fire dragon, slowly going through the hand seals he needed for his assimilation jutsu. However, due to the arrogant nature of the Uchiha leader, he failed to notice that he had made an error in the order of the hand seals. As the roaring dragon finally crashed into them, Madara uttered his jutsu. Ninpo, Duka no Jutsu. As soon as he felt his body start decomposing, Madara knew something was wrong. The jutsu was supposed to pull the chakra of his targets towards him, not the other way round. Also, he could see that he wasn't the only one being affected by the jutsu. Obito had sunk to his knees, a silent scream etched on his face. Beneath him, Madara could feel the Jubi writhing in discomfort as chakra strings emerged from its eye and started latching onto the various shinobi that were strewn across the land. Madara felt a sliver of fear worm its way into his heart as two strings attached themselves to him and Obito. Then the pain slammed into them. Madara thought he had known what pain really felt like, having endured a beating at the hands of Hashirama himself, yet what he was feeling right now surpassed even that experience. He could literally feel his very being fade portion by portion, flowing straight into the mindlessly shrieking Jubi. Despite the burning pain he felt, Madara lifted his head to survey the land. He wasn't the only one affected by his unintentional jutsu. Each and every one of the allied shinobi forces was either dead or in the process of dying. The jutsu had been adjusted to function like the human path of the Rinnegan, meaning the enemy shinobi would die after the jutsu was complete, but he had a body constructed by the Edo Tensei, so what would happen? Why was this even happening? He was supposed to enslave the shinobi world and rule it, with Obito being stuck in his own ideal world. So why was this happening to him? Naruto let out a grunt of pain as he felt all the chakra strings grab every bit of his body they could land on, tears of frustration and sorrow running down his face. He had watched Kakashi and be literally shrivel up and die before his eyes. His team was gone, Sakura had fallen to the jutsu, and Sai was too low on chakra to last long as well. The Konoha teams had also died, their last words being tearful goodbyes and words of soothing to each other. Kurama, I need some help. On it. Here's my chakra. Naruto's nine-tailed chakra mode activated, empowering him with the might of the Bijou within his gut. Unfortunately, that wasn't a very good idea, depending on how you look at it. Naruto cursed as he felt the strings tighten to the point where it was beginning to get difficult to breathe. Why the heck isn't this thing coming off? He shouted, thrashing on the ground as the pain intensified. A wealth of knowledge was flowing into him, experiences he had never gone through, meetings and scheming he had no idea had taken place, jutsu he had never heard of, and several shinobi tactics he could barely understand. It didn't stop at that though. He also felt his mind recounting the memories of several different people. Within the seal, Kurama was also assaulted with the memories of his fellow brothers and sisters. He gripped his head, trying to lessen the flood of information as well as trying to figure a way out of their current situation. Shit, at this rate, we're all going to become part of the Jubi. What did that fucktard Madara do? Outside, Naruto's body was starting to break down as well. He could feel his legs grow steadily hotter until it felt like white-hot flames were trying to burst out of them. His bones were making several disturbing and excruciating sounds that were drowned out by the roars of the incomplete Jubi. Is this it? Am I gonna die like this? No, I refuse to let it end like this. Ero-sennin and Dad left their wills to me, to find the answer to breaking the cycle of hatred. I can't just give up. Not now, not ever. With a supreme effort of will, Naruto forced himself to form a Kage Bunshin. The clone nodded its head and started preparing a Bijudama, only for them to stop when they heard a voice they did not expect to hear again. Naruto! Don't attack, you'll end up blowing yourself to bits. Naruto's eyes widened in disbelief as he found himself sitting in front of the other Biju once again. Like last time, they were with their Jinchuriki placed on their heads. Turning around, Naruto was quick to notice an obvious change. Where's Kurama? Why isn't he here? Son Goku, the four-tailed ape, was the one to break the news to him. Kurama is currently fighting to keep his form from breaking down into chakra to diffuse into the Jubi. We didn't contact him, since he needs his entire concentration on staying alive and in this world. His voice was rough and gravelly, sounding like rocks crashing into each other. Leaping to his feet, Naruto started waving his hands wildly. Well, what are you waiting for? Tell me what I have to do to help him out. Obviously you have an idea how to get out of this situation, right? He questioned, his arms falling to his sides while his hopeful gaze fell on all of them. Goku took a deep breath before he spoke again. We do have an idea, but the price might be too high to pay. The ape shifted from one huge arm to another, avoiding the young sage's curious eyes. The Jubi is the focal point for the Jutsu Madara caste, but we are what make up the Jubi. Instead of all of you being merged with the Jubi being the dominant presence, we can interfere and tweak the Jutsu into making you the one who will benefit from this Jutsu. Naruto recalled the chakra strings that fed him knowledge from the other shinobi. You mean that stuff that happened was your doing? Surprisingly, he wasn't angry with them. They had done what they thought was best for the world to survive, and he could understand why they did it. Out of all the shinobi, he was the only one they would actively help out and entrust their power to. Matatabi, the two-tailed cat, spoke next, her voice low and solemn. Yes. We had no other alternative, and it was the only thing we were capable of doing at the moment. However, her gaze turned mournful and she averted her eyes. If you go through with this, you may lose yourself to the other presences inside the Jubi. Or you may have a personality change. Either way, you'll never be the same after all this. Naruto blanched at that. He would never be the same? Compared to the alternative, which was the Jubi becoming complete and feasting on the civilians, that didn't seem like much of a price to pay. As if hearing his thoughts, Isabu the Three Tails shifted his eye on Naruto. What Matatabine means is you might be overcome by the nature of Madara and decide to conquer the world as well. Even if that doesn't happen, a part of all those killed in the war will be accumulated within you along with yourself. Naruto blinked. When it was put that way, either situation was bad still, Madara would have to compete with the other aspects of the allied force if he wanted to seriously corrupt Naruto. Sure, he may end up being a bit more arrogant, but it wasn't like it would be a bad thing, right? Do it, but I'd like you to do something for me. Komiai was the one who asked the question. What request is it that you wish for us to do? We may not be able to help with it, but we will hear you out. Naruto nodded his head. That was the best he could get, and he was willing to take it. When you come together once again, could Kurama be the base for the fusion? Despite the fact that the Biju could not imitate quite a few human expressions, Naruto could definitely tell that they were confused. Ever since his defeat at the Valley of the End, Kurama hasn't had the chance to actually be free since then. I would appreciate it if you made him the dominant personality in your own fusion. He finished, his eyes locked onto each of theirs. All they could do was nod in silence as Naruto disappeared from their plane of consciousness. Physical world. The Jubi sank to the floor, its body disintegrating as more and more of its chakra was siphoned to the young Uzumaki. All that remained were its head and upper body, 5 outrageously long tails and the left arm. By now, all that was left of the shinobi who had been present was their clothes. Even Madara's Edo Tensei body had been absorbed into Naruto's continuously shifting new body. It was mostly the same as his old one, though there were several differences. For instance, his fingers now ended with dangerously sharp claws that gleamed in the moonlight, his whisker marks had all but vanished, and his hair was longer than ever. In fact, it resembled his father's but was generally shaped like a lion's mane. His body had bulked up more muscle as well, enough to clearly define the muscles through his clothing, yet compact, and not overly ripped. The beast gave one last howl as its consciousness was finally assimilated. With its job done, the Dukkha no Jutsu was released. No sound was made and the earth seemed to hold its breath in anticipation. Would this being be its savior or its executioner? Naruto's eyes slowly opened, revealing themselves to the world. Black scara, containing the eyes of the Jubi, gazed into the moon. His lips stretched into a disarming smile. I made it, I'm still in control. He leapt to his feet and pointed his finger to the moon. Take that, you bastards! Uzumaki Naruto is the undisputed number 1. Chapter 2, The Dragon Tamer. Standing proudly on the sands that made up the wasteland, Uzumaki Naruto maintained the pose he had made immediately after his rebirth. His right hand was thrust into the night sky with his index finger pointing towards the moon, his left hand resting casually against his waist while his feet were planted firmly on the ground. A cocky smirk was plastered on his face, showing off the elongated fangs that were hidden behind his lips, and his eyes gleamed in self-satisfaction. Of course, after a few moments of staying like that, he quickly got serious. His smirk receded until his mouth was set in a thoughtful frown. At the moment, he was probably the only survivor of the Fourth Great Shinobi War. He had seen what Madara had done to the 5 Kage and, despite how much he didn't want to believe it, there was a more than likely chance that they were at death's door. A part of him, the one which was originally his own self, wanted to rush towards Tsunade-bachan and the others and help out, but the other logical side of him made him stay where he was. Even though he had Sakura's knowledge of medical jutsu, he knew that he would not be able to help in any way. Knowing how to do something was not the same as being able to actually do it. The Bunshin no Jutsu had been something they had all been taught in the Ninja Academy, yet it was still the only jutsu he could never hope to achieve well. At least not for quite a while. Scanning the wasteland that had been once thrumming with life, Naruto finally noticed the state of his clothes. His jumpsuit was officially trashed. The piece of clothing had been shredded to several threads in every imaginable place. Not even his pants had survived the transformation, yet his boxers were miraculously intact. He blinked stupidly at the ridiculousness of the situation. His underwear was indestructible while his jumpsuit wasn't? Must be some crazy universal law in anime or something. Wait, what the hell is anime? Focusing on his current situation, Naruto cast a piercing gaze around him, his eyes catching every detail with its piercing gaze. Unlike before, when it had shown up on the incomplete Jubi, his eyes had the full 9 tomo that encircled the 4 concentric ripples. It would seem that the merging had completed the powers of the eyes. Picking out the various clothing that littered the area, Naruto thoughtfully thumbed his chin as he mentally picked out what to choose from. He had to force himself from eyeing the kunoichi outfits several times during the process. He was a guy, damn it, no matter how many female experiences were dumped into his head. After checking out the various clothing that lay strewn along the earth, Naruto silently made his way towards the bundle that was Kakashi's. He knelt next to the bundle, searching for the item he had always wanted ever since he had first met his sensei. Finding the copy ninja's face mask next to his headband, Naruto let a sad smile grace his lips. While a part of Kakashi would always be with him, it still hurt to know that his mentor would no longer be with him in this world. Fitting the mask onto his face, Naruto was about to proceed to other bundles when an idea struck him. Why don't I just use the Intan, Banbutsu Sozo to create something for myself? He thought. It wasn't that bad of an idea. With at least a few hundred Kage Bunshin, he would be able to create something that was both efficient but suited to his tastes. Yeah, that seems like a good idea. He spoke to himself, his words soft and feathery in the wind. Several puffs of smoke later, Naruto was unpleasantly surprised to see that instead of him making 1 Kage Bunshin, he had used enough chakra to create what looked to be 50 clones. At that moment, he felt like slamming his head into something. How the heck did I forget that my chakra control would be like shit after the assimilation? That should have been the first thing I thought about before. Rubbing his head in frustration, Naruto gestured to the assembled Kage Bunshins. Okay guys, I want half of you to work on the Intan, Banbutsu Sozo while the other half work on all chakra control exercises you can remember. I'm going to scavenge the battlefield and see what weapon I can find for myself. All clones smartly saluted. Hi boss. They all scattered into the distance, looking like nothing more than blurs in the night. Naruto sighed as he felt a clone dispel because it accidentally run into a tree. This is gonna take a while. He easily located Samahata, one of the 7 swords of Kiri that he had been rather intimate with. Its white bandages stood out easily against the darkened earth, casting an ethereal glow around the sentient blade. His footsteps were loud in the silence of the night. When he reached it, Naruto unhesitatingly grabbed the handle, watching as the sword's handle glowed a malevolent black color, and the human skull at the end of the handle transformed into a canine skull instead. Well, aren't you looking good? Your chakra has become even more delicious than ever, master. The voice was soft, sensuous, and surprisingly female. If Naruto had ever thought he had seen everything the world had to offer, he made a mental note to eradicate it from his mind. Oh? You seem surprised that I can talk then again. I can't say I blame you for that line of thought. Okay, so you can read my mind now? Before you answer that, what happened to you? You know, the whole glowing handle and shape-changing skull? Naruto asked. Despite the fact that it was a bit disturbing to have a female's voice in his mind, Naruto was rather pleased with it. It reminded him of the recent times when he and Kurama talked. That was a sign that I am yours. Never in my existence have I come across chakra that tastes as divine as yours and is unlimited. To not accept you would be nothing less than foolish to the highest degree. Also, without a source of chakra for me to feed on, I would eventually shrivel up and die. Can you imagine how ugly my scales would look like? No thank you. Naruto still found it weird to think of Samahata as feminine stated. The bandages that were usually around her loosened and began wrapping themselves around Naruto, covering a few of the glaring holes in his current outfit. Naruto stared at her in fascination. He had seen the bandages used only to wrap Samahata's scales. Never had he thought they could be used in this manner. Thanks for that, Same-chan. Just to be sure, is your name really Samahata? He asked as he hefted her onto his shoulder. A grunt escaped his lips as she sank her teeth into his shoulder, one of surprise not pain. So good, more feed me more, Naruto-sama. Naruto shivered as a rather amorous moan was heard. Maybe this was a bad idea. Was she really getting off by sucking his chakra? That's just creepy as hell. What's next? I'm gonna have a harem of women? Eventually, after a few tugs to get her out of her daze, Samahata released her grip from his shoulder. Forgive me, Naruto-sama, but your chakra just tastes so irresistibly good, and my name is what you wish it to be. Before I was named Samahata, I had no name, yet I care not for such a trivial thing. Does a weapon need a name? So long I was fed chakra, I never bothered to make a name for myself. Her voice held no emotion yet was very light. It was almost as though she was making a statement about the weather. Naruto said nothing, merely nodding and settling into a comfortable sitting position. So, what do you know about forging weapons? Feeling her scales start tensing, Naruto quickly sought to avoid a misunderstanding. I'm not saying there is anything wrong with you, but I feel like I should craft my own weapons. It would also be nice for me to make my own blades, maybe a smaller blade for indoor fights. Samahata let out a huff. While I'm not sure about that idea, I do know of forgery. I can teach you a few things in exchange for your chakra. Naruto hung his head in exasperation. What was he, food? At that moment, a few more clones dispelled, earning a sigh from the blonde. This is really going to take a while. Time skip, 1 year later. Naruto wiped a brow of sweat off his forehead as he lifted the blade he had finished forging. At the moment, he was in the same cavern Madara had habituated during the latter years of his life. What he had planned to do was to create a pair of demonic swords that would work in conjunction with Samahata and Kubikura Bocho. He had discovered Zabuza's blade in the hands of Hozuki Suigetsu, one of Sasuke's team members, and had requested it be handed over to him. He had even included the word please. Suigetsu had laughed at him and called him a retard. Naruto laughed at his corpse after he was done with him. It was really easy if you thought about it. Suigetsu was weak to lightning and extreme heat, something Naruto now had access to. Combined with his unlimited chakra reserves, one of the perks of Edo Tensei, Naruto had simply fried the Taka shinobi to death, turning his liquid form into water vapor. Anyways, he had kept Kubikura Bocho because it was able to repair itself using the iron in the blood. Such an ability was very useful, and he had no intention of any civilian stumbling onto it and using it for his or her own needs. So, despite Samahata's grumbling, he had taken to practicing his kenjutsu with both Kiri blades. With Samahata, he focused on coordinating his strikes such that her scales could pierce, shave, gut, and butcher his enemies in the first strike. Her chakra feasting ability was also something he had practiced with. With Kubikura Bocho, Naruto simply had to adjust his fighting style to quick yet powerful strikes that could end the battle before it began or before it was dragged on. He stared at the sheath which contained the sword with pride shining within his swirling eyes. It was expected. After all, who would expect to create such a fine piece of work on their first try? The sheath was a simple white one, albeit with several rune lines running across its length. At the end was a purple thread that was tied in the shape of the letter Z. Wow, I haven't even unsheathed it yet, I can feel the power exuding from it, he muttered. Setting the blade down for the meantime, Naruto arched his back, letting out a satisfied sound as his bones made minute-cracking noises. I think I'll take a break and work on the other one another time, also need to create some new clothes too, he mused. The clothes he was wearing were merely civilian garbs, made for the task of keeping him clothed. They weren't as durable as shinobi clothes though, so he often ended up destroying them in his daily activities. He sat on one of the two beds that were placed in the dark cavern and crossed his arms. One of his clones had heard news of Sasuke and Orochimaru while it had gone to the nearest village, and what it had heard surprised him as well. Apparently, they had both been killed in battle by an unknown kunoichi. Had he still been all Naruto, he would have gone after her in retaliation or something of the sort. Now, he was simply curious as to who the person was. Sasuke was listed as an A-rank missing nin in the bingo book, and Orochimaru was a sannin, someone on par with the Kage and the one to kill the Sandaime Hokage. For them to be defeated, their opponent must have been at least Kage level to do so. Laying his back on the bed, Naruto hummed a tune to himself as he drifted off to sleep. The next day, stepping out into the sunlight, Naruto had to admit that the view of nature was much more pleasant outside than in the sorry excuse of a dwelling place he had been staying in for the past year. His hair had grown out, reaching the middle of his back, while a third bang was developing in between his other two, and Samehada was strapped onto his back like his predecessors. He wore a nondescript shinobi garb, basically consisting of a shirt and pants with sandals, and had his demon blade strapped on his left hip. Kubikuri Bocho was sealed in a scroll, which was safely stored in his pocket dimension to prevent anything from happening to it. His crimson-slit eyes settled on a branch that offered a great vantage spot, and he leapt towards it. Despite the 100-meter gap that separated the two, Naruto easily cleared the distance and landed neatly on the branch. Activating his Jubi eyes, Naruto stared as far as his eyes could see, which was pretty damn far for your information, trying to catch a glimpse of any nearby chakra. He stiffened as he saw what could possibly be the largest chakra source he could expect a human to achieve. The chakra itself looked familiar yet different at the same time. It was able to pass off as a typical shinobi's, but the innate nature of it was totally different from that of his departed comrades. "You want to check it out, Saint-chan?" he questioned. Samehada thrummed once, her version of Sasuke's famous HN. Taking it as a yes, Naruto concentrated on the chakra signature. Instantaneously activating Jikuken Ito, Naruto disappeared in a swirling vortex from his spot, leaving nothing out of place. When he landed at the chakra signature's location, the first thing he saw was a hooded figure standing in a forest on the border of Hai no Kuni. The white cloak that the figure wore did nothing to hide the curves that identified her as a kunoichi, as well as the swell of her breasts, which Naruto estimated to be about a large teacup. She wore steel-toed boots and had black armbands that extended towards her elbows. He could not see what she wore underneath her cloak, but he could see that she had raven hair which extended from under her hood. She had Sasuke's Kusanagi blade strapped onto her back like he did, its handle catching Naruto's eye. Unlike most shinobi, who would immediately assume defensive positions when a man randomly appeared in a vortex, she simply tilted her head in curiosity. In doing so, Naruto was able to see that she was wearing a silver mask that revealed her dainty mouth and supple lips but hid everything else from view. He idly wondered why she wore a mask, but filed those thoughts for another time. Rising to his feet, Naruto let his right hand slid to rest on his unnamed blade's hilt, whilst his left hand offered a lazy wave. "Yo, what could a kunoichi like you be doing at these borders, if you don't mind me asking? Looking at the scenery?" The masked female just stared at him whilst he waited patiently for her answer. After a few moments of silence, she responded to his question. "No, I'm looking for a new master to claim me." Naruto was pretty sure that had he been a lesser man he would have been experiencing a severe nosebleed at her answer. Behind him, Samehada was laughing in her own scary way, her scales contracting and relaxing at irregular intervals. Arching a brow, Naruto let a bit of his shock seep into his voice. "Come again? You're looking for a new master?" At her silent nod, Naruto dared to ask another question. "You're telling me that you're into SNM as well as role-playing?" She shrugged nonchalantly. "If that is what my master wishes, then I shall follow his instructions to the best of my ability." Naruto blinked twice. Well, I certainly wasn't expecting that reaction. I thought she would at least sputter an excuse or something along those lines. "That's fine and all, but who are you?" "I am Uzumaki Naruto, former shinobi of Konohagakure." Naruto didn't see the harm in letting her know which village he came from. What he had learned during his time alone was that most shinobi used the villages where their opponents hailed from to know what to expect. Most people from Konohagakure were fire-natured, Kumogakure had lightning-natured shinobi, Sunagakure had wind-natured shinobi, Iwagakure had earth-natured shinobi, and Kirigakure had water-natured shinobi. The woman immediately knelt down in reverence, confusing the masked blonde. "My apologies, Naruto-sama. I am Uchiha Setsuna, former Naenbyu of Konohagakure and Jinchuriki of the Kyubi no Kurami. Please allow me to take care of you." Naruto felt his brain screech to a halt. "Jinchuriki of the Kyubi no what? Did you just say Kyubi no Kurami? Don't you mean Kurama? How do you even know his name?" To say Naruto was freaking out would be an apt description. Here was an Uchiha before him, a descendant of that bastard Madara. Wait, if he was a part of him, did that make him a bastard as well? calling herself the Jinchuriki of what appeared to be a female Kurama. He was suddenly grateful to the Rikudo Sannin for giving him a male Kyuubi who knows how he would have survived with a female mass of chakra and hatred. The WOM Setsuna pulled her hood back, revealing long silky raven hair that had been braided into a ponytail with a red string while two bangs framed her face like Sasuke's did. Her dainty fingers reached to her mask and Naruto tightened his grip on his blade. She gently removed her mask and Naruto could only gape in shock, some horror and a slight bit of amusement. Her Sharingan was already active, 3 tomos swirling around her pupil lazily. She had the same facial structure as her male counterpart, yet Naruto could see that while Sasuke's looks had been somewhat Binshinin, Setsuna's was undeniably feminine. Looking into her eyes, Naruto couldn't find the usual hatred he had come to expect in Sasuke. If anything, her eyes greatly resembled that of Haku. You're a female Sasuke on one hand, this was a pretty creepy situation. To see the female counterpart of someone you know is always gonna be weird as fuck. Then again, the parallels between Setsuna and Haku were becoming clearer. Like Haku, Setsuna seemed to have lost her master, and couldn't seem to cope with the thought of living her life without one. Hi, Uchiha Sasuke is this world's version of me. It is surprising that he abandoned his village for power. Something must have happened to make him turn out this way, she stated, still kneeling before him. I don't know why you're kneeling down, but can you please get up? It's kinda embarrassing me, he asked. Hi, Naruto-sama. She was immediately on her feet, her head still bowed in submission. When I fought Uchiha Sasuke and the Sannin Orochimaru, his last words before he died was that you would be able to defeat me. All my previous masters have been stronger than I and has become a standard for me. Since you are the strongest being in this world, that makes you the only choice for me. Naruto could feel a headache coming on. How did you even get here? Was it an accident or was your trip here planned? She shook her head. Negative. I was thrust into this dimension by Itachi Ai via his Mangekyo Sharingan to prevent my capture by the criminal organization Daybreak. I was fully prepared to die, but Kurami had other ideas. I see. Just so I'm clear, what rank are you? I was scheduled to join the NBU the day after we were attacked. At the moment, I would say I am not quite a Jonin, but definitely higher than a high-level Chunin without using Kurami's chakra. When I tap into her power, I estimate that I am at least high Jonin level. Sai, you're not gonna leave me if I told you to, would you? As he expected, she resolutely shook her head. Rubbing his forehead, Naruto silently motioned for her to grab him. Feeling her lay her hand on his shoulder, he teleported them away to his place. Time skip 1 year. Uchiha Setsuna watched in curiosity and awe, though her face remained as blank as ever, as her master skillfully drew several seals on the ground. They were in a clearing somewhere within Kumo-no-Kuni, just outside one of the many hideouts of the deceased Uchiha Obito. Throughout the year, they had traveled from one hideout to another in search of anything that could be of use to them, and sealing away those which weren't. Naruto had initially been skeptical of her reasons for offering herself to him in servitude, but, as the weeks passed, he became more used to her presence. Naruto regarded her as a friend of sorts and often drew the line on how far she should cater to his whims. He wasn't going to treat her as Zabuza had initially treated Haku. To him, she also had a right to live her life independent from him. Unfortunately, Setsuna vehemently opposed that view, stating that she would follow his to the ends of the earth if he wished. She crossed her arms as she watched from her perch on a nearby tree, her cloak opening to reveal what she wore underneath: form-fitting black pants with a purple cloth tied around her waist and a navy blue shirt. They were preparing to travel to other dimensions for one reason: the shinobi era was as good as dead. With only genin and a few chunin left in all the villages, it was only a matter of time before the civilians took over. If they stayed, they would always be feared by the daimyo, and that fear would evolve into hatred. Such was human behavior. Setting his sealing brush down, Naruto exhaled in relief. The seal he had been working on was very complex, using the principle of kamui to send them to another world. Apparently there were several dimensions that were in the universe, meaning if he left this world there was a high chance that he would never return. He turned to his servant. He preferred the term helper, but she continued to refer to herself as such and nodded. The seal is complete. Ready to go? Hi, Naruto-sama, she replied, leaping down from her post. Landing beside him in the center of the seal, she let a small smile cross her face. Let's be on our way. Right. Activating his Mangekyo Sharingan, Naruto started weaving the hand seals for the jutsu. By the way, are Sasuke's eyes still in perfect condition? Setsuna nodded. Rummaging in her cloak, she pulled out a glass vial which contained 2 eyes encased in a clear liquid. The eyes had the appearance of 3 intersecting ellipses with straight pinwheels in the center and a red design and a black background. Sasuke's Ion no Mangekyo Sharingan. She had harvested them after her battle with both missing nin, preventing any other shinobi from obtaining such powerful eyes. Good, when we arrive I will assimilate them into my own eyes. That way, no one else will be able to use them and I will further increase my ocular power. I don't know where we are going to end up, and it would be best to have another ace up our sleeve. He found it ironic that a while ago he would have never considered this option, yet now he was all for it. She slipped the vial back into her cloak as the seal lines glowed a crimson light. Is that why you melded Sasuke's Kusanagi with my Kurohime? She questioned as she gently grabbed his right arm. Naruto rolled his eyes. Do you really need me to tell you that? He asked as he finished the hand seals. Her response was a giggle before they disappeared in a crimson flash. Fiore, Fairy Tale Guild. In the office of Guild Master Makarov, two individuals sat down with serious expressions. The first was an extremely short old man. He had dark eyes and white hair surrounding his balding skull and in a thick mustache, which he hid under a funny jester hat in orange-blue stripes. He was Makarov Dreyer, the master of Fairy Tale. He had his hands folded as he gazed with hidden pride in his eyes at the person in front of him. She was tall for a 13-year-old. She had long scarlet hair that fell past her shoulders, with two locks framing her face. She wore custom-made armor by Hart Cruz Smiths, a blue skirt and black boots. Her brown eyes stared right into those of Makarov. Mission complete, Master. The package was delivered as requested. Makarov chuckled at her serious demeanor. Good job, Urza. Why don't you go take a break? You've been working yourself ragged this week, he suggested. Urza shook her head vehemently, a tick mark forming. Not until I beat Mirajane's record. I will be the strongest woman in Fairy Tale. That'll show her who the stronger one is. She growled, her armored hand clenched tightly and earning a sweat drop from Makarov. Talk about intense, these youngsters are always so full of energy, Makarov silently remarked. There was no warning. No spike of magical energy, no rampage of animals, no ominous feeling to prepare them for the oppressive weight that they all suddenly felt appear. Just at that moment, a terrifying roar was heard throughout the city that made Makarov pale in fear. It was the unmistakable roar of a dragon, and not just any dragon. Makarov knew that dragon, the Dragon King himself, Agnologia. Makarov was out of his seat and opening his window faster than Urza had ever seen him move. She saw him freeze as he looked out and felt a sliver of fear touch her heart as he started trembling. Joining him at the balcony, she saw what exactly made Makarov so afraid, and she couldn't blame him at all. The dragon was massive, a huge black entity that engulfed the city with its size. It was a mastodonic dragon whose upper body was covered in black round scales, which in turn were decorated by spiraling blue markings. Its lower body was gray in color, and appeared to be smooth. Its head was blunt and rounded with four large and elongated plates extending backwards, as well as a mouth full of sharp teeth and below it an elongated protrusion pointing downwards. Its gargantuan, multi-layered wings were made of the same plates covering its body, making them seem like bird wings. Its massive tail split in two at the end and took a double stinger-like appearance. It was staring at two children that stood in the center of the street, right in front of it. Urza spun and started rushing towards the exit but was stopped by a strong grip on her shoulder. Wait, Urza. Something's not right. Makarov called out, his eyes still fixated upon the Dragon King. Urza whipped her head to face Makarov, her eyes wide with disbelief and anger. Master Makarov, the children are in danger. At least let me help evacuate them and those within the vicinity. Even as she was speaking, Urza saw many mages from the guild pour out onto the streets, prepared to hold off the dragon. Makarov shook his head, still not facing her. It's not that. Agnologia is acting strangely. He hasn't done anything more than make himself known to us, he's just staring at the children. Tearing her eyes towards the scene, Urza could see that the guild master was right. The dragon was simply staring at the children, more specifically the blonde one. Now that Urza got a good look at them, she realized that they were teens, both looking like they were well in the middle of puberty. The girl was wearing a white cloak which revealed only her steel-toed boots and the black armbands she had. She was quite attractive. Her face was very feminine, equally as beautiful as hers and Mirajane's. The boy wore a long-sleeved, ankle-length black coat with red lining that was open at his chest and held together by three X-shaped marks, then left to flare out into a number of ragged coattails. He also had 4 vertical black lines on his forearms and black, tattoo-like bands crossing over his chest, wrists, and ankles. Similar bands, but with crimson ends, were around his neck as collars. His pants were very streamlined and form-fitting yet hung loosely enough for him to feel comfortable in. She felt herself blush lightly as his sculpted form could be seen through his clothing. A face mask hid most of his face from view and created a mysterious look to him, while his shoulder-length golden mane whipped about in the wind. Resting on his left hip was a sheathed katana while a huge great sword strapped onto his back. Wow, he looks so cool! Her blush deepened. When she finally saw his eyes, she let out a startled gasp. Instead of him having normal eyes, he had black scara and crimson eyes that had a strange design on it. To her, they seemed like 3 commas that had been arranged in a circular manner. What the heck? Turning to look at Agnologia, she blinked once, twice and 3 times to check if she was dreaming by any chance. After confirming that she was indeed lucid, Urza watched in wonder as the same eyes she had seen on the boy appear on the Dragon King's eyes. Did he just cast a spell on the dragon? That's impossible. No mere human could ensnare a dragon such as this one by himself. She watched as the boy said something she couldn't hear and reached towards the dragon's snout, which it brought down for him to touch. Every mage in Fairy Tail went into various states of shock when they saw the dragon's shape ripple. Like a projection, the Dragon King disappeared bit by bit, first losing its tail, spreading towards its legs and stomach, creeping along its forelimbs until only his head remained. After a moment it too disappeared, joining the rest of its departed body. The boy turned his body to face the crowd which had gathered while the girl ignored them and stared at the 2 mages on the balcony. Hey everyone, can you tell us where the hell we are? We're kinda new here, hee hee hee. On that day a legend was born, the legendary Dragon Tamer. Chapter 3, Meet the Guild. The streets, which had been a roar of chaos and panic a mere moment ago, were now as silent and lifeless as a cemetery. Many people, mages and even spirits openly gaped at the blonde teen and what he had just achieved. Those who had no idea of Acnologia's position of Dragon King were amazed that he was able to subdue the massive beasts while Makarov and a few other spirits exchanged nervous glances. Taming a dragon, something that had never been considered in the history of Fiore, and sealing it away with nothing more than a look. Makarov could only hope that the boy would not be seduced by the lull of darkness because of this. In the crowd of Fairy Tail mages, 4 teens stared at the blonde boy and raven-haired girl with varying expressions. The first one, a boy of about 12 years, had a combined look of disappointment, awe and terror at what he had just witnessed. He was lean, slightly muscular with an average height. His skin was lightly tanned and his eyes were jet black. His spiky pink hair seemed to defy the law of gravity, sticking out in every direction like he had never seen a brush before. He wore a black waistcoat with gold trimmings over his chest with no undershirt, white knee-length trousers, a thick black wristband on his left wrist, black open-toed sandals and a scarf which was decorated with white scales. Sitting on his shoulder was a small blue cat-like creature that was busy eating a fish. Wow, that guy took care of the dragon so easily. I definitely gotta challenge him before he leaves, the boy declared, pumping his fist into the air. The cat creature nodded its head comically, still eating the fish. But Natsu, if he could beat that dragon, what sort of chance do you stand against him? You're doomed if you fight him. Natsu shot the cat a dirty look. Way to show your friend some support, Happy, he sarcastically stated, his voice dry. I try my best to deliver. Bastard. The second boy, looking to be around the same age as the first, shot Natsu an annoyed look. Unlike everyone else, he was dressed in only green pants and black boots. His most prominent feature was his spiky black-colored hair. He had dark blue eyes and his body was quite toned. On his right pectoral muscle was a dark blue stamp in the shape of a bird. A necklace, which resembled a sword with a stone in it, hung around his neck. Be quiet, Natsu. You can't even defeat me and you want to deal with that guy? And you wonder why I call you an idiot, Lizard Breath. Natsu, who had been administering a noogie to Happy, whirled about to face the apparent exhibitionist. What did you call me, Gray? At least I'm not an exhibitionist who can't take the heat, asshole. As the 2 boys began to bicker once again, the latter of the group watched as Urza and Makarov came out of the gates, the latter heading towards the unknown strangers and the former moving towards their group. The first girl wore a gothic-looking overly revealing outfit. She donned a dark, skimpy sleeveless shirt adorned by some light curved motifs on the chest, a pair of leather shorts held up by a studded belt with a demonic-looking buckle and thigh-high boots with stiletto heels, each bearing a skull adorned by a flower on their upper front parts. She also sported a bracelet shaped like a demonic arm around her right wrist, a ring on the same hand's middle finger, and dark nail polish. Her large blue eyes never strayed from the blonde, who was engaged by the master, and her long white hair swayed as she shifted from one foot to another. Her hair was tied in a high, large ponytail on the back of her head by a massive dark ribbon but allowed a large strand of it to cover her forehead, while 2 bangs framing her face and reaching down to her chest. She folded her arms as a leer spread on her face. That guy seems pretty cute, doesn't he, Lisana? The final person of interest could only be described as the previous girl's sister. She was a petite young girl with short white hair and blue eyes. She wore a simple pink dress paired with dark red shoes. Mireille, she sighed tiredly, though one could see her cheeks flushing lightly. Urza soon drew near them, her face set in a scowl that the elder sister was eager to return. Mary Jane, she stiffly acknowledged. Scarlet, Mary Jane responded, just as dryly as her red-headed rival, inclining her head in a manner that passed as greetings. Turning just in time to witness the boy and Master Makarov head up to his office, she let out a small huff of displeasure. Darn it, I wanted to talk to the cutie before he went with Gigi. She whined, crossing her arms over her chest. Like he would ever want to talk to you of all people. Urza bit out, her eyes narrowed. Suddenly, a hand landed on her shoulder, scaring the three girls into making startled jumps. When Urza spun around, she found herself looking into the eyes of the female who had been with the male, a calculating onyx color. Jerking her shoulder away, Urza responded with a glare towards the unknown girl. Sorry to disturb your conversation, but can you please inform me of where Naruto and I are? Her voice cut through the bickering of the boys, drawing their attention towards the girls. As Natsu and Gray fully turned to them, Lisana took the initiative in answering Setsuna's question. Well, you're in Fairy Tail, the only guild in Magnolia Town. Surely you've heard of it before. We, sorta have a bad reputation. She admitted in embarrassment, shooting a pointed look towards Natsu. Said boy whistled innocently whilst avoiding her gaze, making Setsuna arch a brow. What's a guild? Setsuna asked, storing the earlier information away in her head. She quirked her head when everyone, Happy included, looked at her as though she had suddenly sprouted two heads. What is it? Urza sighed tiredly. I wonder if Master Makarov is having any better luck with the other guy than we are. Makarov's office. In the master's office, Makarov rubbed his head in frustration while Naruto, sitting opposite him and sipping sake in front of him, smiled disarmingly. The old master opened his eyes to mock glare at the youth in front of him. The story he had just heard was very hard to swallow. To hear of things like shinobi, chakra, Akatsuki and the progenitor of that world being revived, one could easily understand his skeptic views. So you're telling me that you come from another world, a world constantly filled with constant warfare and subterfuge? Naruto nodded, settling his cup down, his eyes gaining a serious light. Hi. 2 years before I attempted to leave, we were in the midst of the Fourth Great Shinobi War. No, the better word would be climax. All shinobi nations allied themselves against the real leader of Akatsuki, a man named Uchiha Obito, and his partner Uchiha Madara, a legend amongst the shinobi world. His eyes shifted to Madara's Ion no Mangekyo Sharingan, unknowingly sending a jolt of surprise down Makarov's spine. They planned to revive the Jubi, a primordial demon which was the progenitor of my world, which was defeated by the Sage of Six Paths, and use its power to cast an infinite illusion upon the world using the moon as a medium. Makarov twirled his mustache as he listened in fascination. Why would they want to do that? Were they planning to enslave everyone in your world, or did they have an even grander scheme in the works? A part of him was still skeptical about all this, but he could not deny that there was some merit with young Naruto's story. He had never seen any kind of magic that was capable of casting such an illusion on the world, nor had he seen or heard of such strange eyes before. Naruto scowled as he recalled the motivations of the Uchiha. Obito watched the love of his life die before his very eyes, at the hands of the person he entrusted her to no less, and joined Madara in his attempt to carry out the Eye of the Moon plan so he could be reunited with her again. Madara, on the other hand, wanted a world where the concept of winners never existed, meaning his constant loss to Senju Hashirama wouldn't matter anymore. He also desired a world where peace had no meaning, a world filled with even more bloodshed and carnage than the elemental nations were already going through. Makarov let out a sigh. He was a warmonger, wasn't he? He had seen many of that type throughout his years and knew that instigating a war would be something that this Madara would do. Yep. In order for them to achieve this, they needed to capture all the bijou that were scattered in the nations. Obito, charged with impersonating Madara after his death, manipulated several shinobi into joining his cause, though he stayed in the shadows for a pretty long time. Whilst he was out of the picture, the figurehead leader of Akatsuki was the one who jostled the extraction of the bijou instead. Naruto rested his head on his hands, his eyes closed as he continued his tale. They eventually succeeded, though the Jubi was incomplete. They needed the entire bijou for it to be complete but failed to get the Hachibi and Kyubi. The only reason the Jubi was revived was because Obito managed to grab a portion of their chakra for the ritual. He stopped, poured himself another cup of sake and downed it all without a care in the world. Makarov couldn't decide if he should be amused or displeased with the boy's drinking tendency. I'm not sure what the legal age for you is in your world, but in Earthland a kid your age isn't allowed to be drinking sake and alcoholic drinks for quite some time, he pleasantly stated, a smile tugging at his lips. Naruto just shrugged. Old enough to kill, old enough to drink and old enough to fuck, so you could say my legal age would be 12. You don't happen to have any stronger stuff in your bar, do ya? Makarov let out a long boisterous laugh, his tiny figure shaking in glee. Has anyone ever told you that you're a very interesting boy? All the damn time. Fairy Tail, ground floor. Meanwhile, Urza and the others continued their interaction with Setsuna. After getting over the shock of someone not knowing what a guild was, they had proceeded to drill her with the various details regarding magic, guilds and dark guilds, dragons and anything else they could think of. The redhead frowned as she watched Setsuna converse with Mary Jane and Gray. She doesn't act like any civilian, yet her movements and body language don't reveal anything about her. Her eyes narrowed as she glimpsed the sword which was strapped onto her back. The sword was pretty small compared to a few of her own blades, but Urza could tell that it wasn't the size of the blade that made it dangerous. She would have to see the blade itself to determine what exactly it was that made it special. Perhaps a spar was in order? Natsu's voice cut through her thoughts and dragged her into their conversation. So, Setsuna, who's that other guy you were with? He must be really strong, huh? I mean, did you see how he took care of that dragon? It was so freaking awesome. He questioned, his eyes wide with curiosity and awe as he recalled the scene once more. Mary-Jane turned herself towards the former shinobi with interest as well. Yeah, the cutie seems strong. He your boyfriend or something? She teased. Urza could have sworn that she heard a slight change in Myra's question, though she found herself interested in the answer as well. It's not like I like him or anything. I just want to find out if they have any illicit relationship going on. Yeah. She was quite interested in the boy already, and it would be bad if Setsuna was his girlfriend, and she came between them because she didn't know. Setsuna shook her head in response. Naruto-sama is not my boyfriend. He is my master and I am his tool. His every wish is my command and I will do them to the best of my abilities, she replied as she received her cup of steaming herbal tea from Lisana, who had decided to offer her a drink. Thank you for the tea, Lisana-san. The group, minus Lisana who had been brewing Setsuna's tea for her, all gaped at her with varying degrees of incredulousness. Natsu and Happy actually appeared to be frozen in place, their mouths hanging in identical expressions of shock, while Gray had a mild blush on his face as he averted his eyes from her. Lisana looked confused as to why the boys were acting this strangely. Mary-Jane actually looked surprised at the answer she received, going so far as to drop the slice of bread she was about to bite. She quickly recovered and leaned forward, a sly smile stretched on her angelic face. Oh? You guys roleplay, huh? Well, isn't that interesting? Do you mind if I join in? She asked, a little too eagerly in Urza's opinion. Setsuna's eyes narrowed as a minute amount of killing intent oozed out of her being, projected towards the elder Strauss. Naruto-sama requires only one tool and I shall not allow him to be saddled with anything less than adequate. You are not worthy of being his weapon. The visage of a snarling fox appeared behind her, its maw wide open and displaying several rows of sharp teeth, further enhancing the glare she sent towards Mary-Jane. Said girl also released her K.I as she bristled at Setsuna's words. You mind repeating that again, bitch? Her tone was colder than an iceberg, and earning a wide berth from the spectators watching the two girls. Are you implying that I am weak? You think you're stronger than me? She growled out, barely resisting from smashing Setsuna's face into the ground. I don't think so, I know so. Naruto-sama deserves only the best and that clearly isn't you. Setsuna smirked at the end as she watched the murderous look on Mary-Jane's face grow. Kurami-chan, do you mind if I happen to call upon your chakra during the bout? Of course you can. She tried to take your place beside Naruto-san, your alpha, just don't finish it quickly. I want to savor this fight. Of course. Makarov's office. So why did Acnologia appear in Magnolia Town? Was it somehow related to your crossing into this world? Makarov questioned, his eyes probing and curious. Speaking of which, what exactly did you do to the Dragon King? Naruto blinked in confusion. That sorry excuse of a dragon is this world's Dragon King? Bahamut-sama would either be laughing his scaly ass off or raring to go teach the other dragons a lesson, he murmured. Well, I'm not really sure if my time-space seal was the trigger for Anko Alcon the scaly ass's appearance, but I'm sure it factored into the situation. When we crossed over here, I didn't immediately end up beside Setsuna, I ended up in a huge cave, staring at the scaly ass. He went on a rant about him being the strongest being in the world and talking trash about humans being insignificant worms that were beneath him. To be honest, I actually spaced out more than a few times during his monologue before I got bored and teleported to Setsuna's location, which just happened to be this place. He shifted in his seat, finishing off the rest of his sake in one go. I'm pretty sure he followed me using his own time-space ability because I left during his little speech. Being a Dragon King, it must be a first for someone to ignore him like that, and he probably couldn't play it off well. Makarov scratched his chin as he contemplated his words. It's true that Acnologia could have come after him for such a reason. He always spoke about how humans were insects to be exterminated by him, and to be ignored by an insect would definitely ignite his fury. However, I feel that there is more to it than just that. What are you hiding, Uzumaki Naruto? You never said what it was you did to him back there, Makarov pointed out. Naruto nodded his head, thinking of how much he should reveal. After quickly selecting the information safe to reveal, Naruto tapped the desk as a small grin made its appearance on his face. Well, for you to understand what I did, I'll have to go over a few basic concepts that you'll need to know. He held up his index finger. First concept, bloodline limits. These are abilities passed down genetically within specific clans. There are a few more details to it, but that's the basic gist of it. His middle finger joined his index 1, signifying the second concept. Second thing you need to know, the Mangekyo Sharingan. This is an advanced version of the Sharingan, an I-based bloodline limit, and is the reason I was able to subdue Aknogi Agnoli. You know what? Screw it, I'll call him Scalias from now on. Yeah, anyway, what I did was to activate my Mangekyo Sharingan and use one of its signature jutsu to send him into an entirely different dimension. Hearing the boy talk about sending the King of Dragons into another dimension without any regret whatsoever made Makarov slightly worried. Naruto-san, he began, I'm not sure you understand the situation. Without Acnologia in this world, the natural order of the dragons will spiral out of control and they might even take their frustrations out on us humans. He finished, his tone grave. Naruto arched a brow. Well, when you put it that way, it does sound bad. However, I think you forgot to include the fact that he can also use time-space abilities to escape from whichever dimension he is in right now. If that happens, I'm very sure he will keep quiet about him being outmaneuvered by a mere human. His pride may actually help in this circumstance. At that moment, both men felt a tremor through the floor. Makarov only sighed in exasperation while Naruto watched in confusion. Seeing the young boy's lost expression, Makarov let out a wry chuckle. It seems like my kids have started another fight. At this rate, I'm going to be swarmed by mountains of paperwork by the council. He groaned. Naruto let out a barking laugh as he stood from his seat and started cracking his knuckles. Did anyone tell you that you guys are crazy, old man? Samahata, it's time to eat, he cried out, gripping the great sword on his back. With a shit-eating grin settling on his face, Naruto channeled chakra into his feet and leaped towards the door, kicking it open and speeding towards the fighting that was taking place. The dwarf-like guild master sighed once more. I completely forgot to ask if he would join us. Well, I can always do that later in the day. I wonder if he has some more of that wonderful sake? Fairy tale, ground floor. Setsuna dodged a straight punch that was sent her way with the ease of one who honed their skills by countless hours of training. Mira Jane did not let that deter her from following up with a spinning low kick as she fell forward, using her hand to balance herself as a makeshift platform. She narrowed her eyes in victory as Setsuna jumped to avoid her strike, just as she planned. Using the momentum generated from her spinning kick, Mira Jane spun around on the spot, her natural flexibility allowing her to fire off a double boot strike to Setsuna. Unfortunately for Mira Jane, Setsuna managed to twist her body away from the deadly stiletto heels and land safely away from her. She made no move to attack, opting to shrug off her cloak to prevent it restricting her movements. She felt Kurami's bloodlust emanating from the seal, silently begging her to use Kurohime on the white-haired girl. Sorry, but Naruto-sama wouldn't like it if I killed anyone, maybe when she's older. It was hard to tell if she was being serious or not. On the sidelines, Natsu and Gray watched the fight with increasing interest while Urza sat in a corner, thinking over Setsuna's words. She willingly offered herself to him. Why would she do that? Images of her time as a slave started forming in her mind, being forced to work for many hours during the day and receiving so little to feed themselves, losing her right eye in order to protect the other's. Jelao, what is it about him that made her choose him as her? On one hand, she could sorta understand where Setsuna was coming from. The Ravenet had, for as long as she could remember, been leashed with someone she came to acknowledge as her master. If she were to deviate from such a lifestyle, she would most likely be lost and unsure of what to do with her life. On the other hand, Urza could not help but want to blame Naruto for accepting Setsuna as his weapon even though she knew she was being biased. Back to the fight, Setsuna dashed towards Mira Jane with her body tucked to the ground. She leaped over the tables and chairs that obstructed her path and twisted in midair to fling a few kunai at Mira Jane, and try an overhead kick towards Mira Jane's head. Mira Jane threw herself away from the kunai, ignoring the cries made by the others as a few struck a bit too close for comfort, and blocked Setsuna's kick. Seizing the opportunity presented, she brutally slammed her fist in Setsuna's inner thigh, using her magic energy to temporarily strengthen her arm tenfold. Setsuna let out a grunt of pain before she felt her thigh bone fracture before violently headbutting Mira Jane. Jumping back to give herself some space, she blurred through several hand seals. Holding her left arm out, she let the lightning chakra flow through her tenketsu and blaze around her hand. Chidori, 1,000 birds. Mira Jane slammed her right hand onto the floor, causing several rock particles to encase her limb. An excited smirk crossed her face as she prepared to charge. Who could have thought that the strange girl would be so good at fighting? Mira Jane didn't know how that happened, but she didn't care. Now she had another rival besides Urza who could even push her to even greater heights of strength. Someone who had the capability to defeat her. Not too bad, but I still don't see what it is that makes you so tough. Both girls charged towards each other, ignoring the shouts of spectators as they neared each other. When they were less than 50 centimeters from each other, both drew their fists back. A shout interrupted Urza's thoughts before a crash resounded in the room. Turning her eyes to where Setsuna and Mira Jane were fighting, Urza was gifted with the sight of Naruto blocking Setsuna's lightning-infused hand with his sword while his left hand caught Mira Jane's rock-encased fist. Yar, is this how you greet everyone you see, or is it just me? Chapter 4, Demon King vs. Salamander. Naruto peered at the girl Setsuna had been fighting before he had intervened, his eyes continuously being drawn to her beautiful white hair. She was glaring at him in frustration, the frustration of being denied the chance of defeating her foe, and pushing against his offending limb in an effort to force him back. Unfortunately for her, Naruto was far stronger than he appeared to be and easily held her fist steadily. Naruto swiveled his head to stare at Setsuna, Samahata happily munching on the lightning chakra. Setsuna, you mind explaining why you two were fighting? The young girls of the guild, Urza included, all blushed lightly at his voice. Unlike the other adolescents, Naruto's voice wasn't so deep that it was weird, nor was it as high-pitched as a late bloomer like Natsu. It could best be described as smooth and silky. Yet manly Setsuna felt a tick mark develop as she caught the very light dusting of pink on Mirajane's cheeks. Strauss-sen wished to be Naruto-sama's tool. Unfortunately, she is nowhere near strong enough to best me and is therefore unworthy of replacing me as your servant. She did not handle the truth well and started the fight. I was merely going along with it. Naruto often wondered how she could say stuff like that with a straight face. Setsuna, having removed her hand once Samahata finished ingesting her chakra, retrieved her cloak and wrapped it around herself. The other mages all looked at the scene before them with discernible confusion and, in the case of the younger ones, hidden jealousy. The male half were slightly jealous that the new guy already had one pretty girl as a servant, and was already sinking his claws into the hearts of the girls, while the females were more than a little annoyed at Setsuna's attitude. Naruto scratched his head with his right arm, dropping Samahata with the utmost care, and let out a little sigh. Somehow, inexplicably, Naruto knew that something like this wasn't going to be a one-time deal. Dad, Mom, for once, I wish my luck was different. I can already feel the headache of dealing with them. Pretty sure Mom would approve though. Quickly becoming frustrated with her lack of success, Mirajane decided that it was time to make herself be heard. Do you mind getting your hand off me before you start getting into your moment? She barked out, whacking Naruto's head with her other hand. However, despite all the fuss she was displaying, Mirajane didn't really mind the position she was in. Reason? Now she could admire the boy up close and still keep her image as the demon of fairy tale. Before, she wouldn't have given a single fuck, but ever since puberty, her hormones had literally opened her eyes to the discovery of boys not being as ugly as she had once thought. Naruto was quite as handsome as she had imagined, using the brief glance she had seen before he went with Makarov. The upper half of his clothing clung to his tall frame like a second skin, revealing long, lean yet muscular arms that sent pleasant shivers racing through her. The coat was opened at the chest, revealing the red undershirt that lay beneath it, as well as a magnificent view of his abs, and flared out in a number of ragged coattails in a manner that increased his cool factor. She had also found the claws that he possessed to be rather intriguing, and the tattoos that she could make out each time he shifted labeled him as a bad boy in her book. The mask that covered his lower face also intrigued her to no end. She hid a smirk at the thought. Bad boys were always fun to hang out with. Maybe Naruto wouldn't mind if she spent some time with him. Naruto realized then that he was still gripping Mirajane's hand and released it with a sheepish laugh. Sorry about that. I was trying to stop you too, but wanted to show off as well. Hope you don't mind me postponing your fight with Setsuna. He paused, clearly not knowing the girl before him. Mirajane Strauss, the strongest female mage in fairy tale. You're not so bad yourself, Naruto-sama. She coyly replied, striking a rather daring pose before him while discreetly flipping the middle finger to Setsuna. Naruto idly noted that she had the makings of a curvaceous body and would definitely grow to become a very beautiful woman. I take it that Setsuna already made mention of me, did she? He asked, already guessing what she must have said. Scanning the crowd with a disinterested gaze, Naruto arched a brow when he saw two boys fighting in the sea of mage members. Yes, she did say something about being your tool. Care to explain that, Naruto-san? Naruto turned to see an angry-looking redhead march her way towards him, her hands on her developing hips and a gleam in her eye that did not bode well for many. Naruto looked into her brown eyes lazily, a book inexplicably materializing in his hands. You say something, Beneheim? I didn't quite catch that, he lazily replied, slowly fanning himself with his book. It was indeed satisfying to see the redhead gain a tick mark, clearly trying to suppress her urge to bash his head in. He absently wondered if he should freak everyone out by eating without removing his mask. Kakashi must have had a reason for doing that repeatedly. I said, everyone could tell by her voice that she was quickly getting frustrated with the new boy, that perhaps you should explain what Setsuna meant by that, Naruto-san. Urza nearly growled out, her frustration at his attitude combined with the fact that Mirajane was making rude gestures at her behind Naruto's back making her ruder than she normally would be. Naruto snapped his book, humming to a tune that both girls couldn't recognize. Isn't it rude to demand something from someone without even introducing yourself first? Urza was about to reply, her face flushing slightly at her forgetfulness, when Mirajane smoothly slid between the two, cutting the redhead mage off. Don't waste your breath on Urza here, she gets this way almost all the time. In fact, why don't I introduce you to everyone? Urza gained a tick mark at her rival's interruption. Like he'd want to be introduced to anyone by a little devil like you. Now move and let him answer my question, Urza said as she none too gently shoved the goth girl away from the boy, who was watching the proceedings with slight confusion and amusement. So? Why does she call you her master? She questioned, trying to make it sound as nonchalant as possible. That might have worked if she was a lot more sociable, but alas, that was not to be. Her brown eyes had unintentionally darted away from his the minute she uttered the question, and her voice had betrayed the sadness, angry and accusing emotion she felt. Naruto noticed her actions and silently came to the conclusion that Urza had some history regarding slavery. Whether she had taken part in it, had been forced into it, or had been a slave herself was something he did not want to ask about. He too had kept most of his secrets from Makarov during their little chat after all. Setsuna refers to me as her master because she wishes to call me that. Despite what she says, I'm more like her close friend than her master, he replied, lazily flipping through the pages of his sealing book. This lightning seal could be enhanced if I change the last sign from contain to contain. Indefinitely contain is too vague for it to be reliable. It might even end up activating when I wouldn't need to use it, but contain indefinitely will allow me to choose the time I use it and make it suit my situation. Urza's eyes narrowed suspiciously as she crossed her arms. And why does she do that? What possible reason would she have to call you that? She further questioned, quickly getting frustrated with his laid-back attitude. Naruto continued going through various seals in his book whilst he answered her question. From what she's told me, that's how she's been raised to live. She seeks out a new master when the previous one dies and always goes after the strongest person within a certain age group. Surprisingly, she hasn't been ordered into any carnal acts, so I guess she doesn't just pick any person who happens to be the strongest, though she doesn't mind doing them for her master. He paused his reading to focus his eyes on her. If you want to know more about Setsuna and her relationship with me, I would strongly recommend that you ask her yourself. And with that said, Naruto nonchalantly flashed his hand out and caught a speeding Mary Jane by her waist. The sudden stop caused him to lurch forward, surprising him with the force Mary Jane had packed into her leap, and tripping against the startled Urza. Before anything embarrassing could happen, Naruto sent a pulse of chakra to his feet to stop his incoming fall. Sticking to the wooden floor, Naruto hastily swung Mary Jane onto his back and grabbed Urza with his left hand. Taking care to avoid any damage to his sealing book, he didn't want to be responsible for all the damage a careless mistake could make. Mary Jane blinked in confusion when she found herself resting on Naruto's back, instead of feeling her feet embedded in her rival's gut. The confusion lasted briefly before her mind caught up with the fact that an opportunity was right in front of her. Without pausing to think of anything else, the demon of fairy tale immediately wrapped her arms around his chest and pressed her blossoming bust onto his back whilst she discreetly rubbed his hard muscles. Oh, wow, they feel so hard and strong. I want to stay like this forever, she thought to herself as her fingers trailed across his chest. A smirk grew on her face as she felt a hard nub, and she wasted no time in grabbing it painfully with her fingers. Atomic Twister! Yeah, Argarg! Naruto screamed as he felt her nails digging into his anatomy. Most would think that since he survived the assimilation jutsu, anything else would be nothing more than a mosquito bite. Well, that was indeed true, but Naruto had hardly been attacked in that area before. As such, that area was a tad bit more sensitive than he would have liked. He jerked violently, accidentally causing her to tighten his grip as he bucked. Setsuna, who had been watching them talk whilst making some small conversation with Lisanna, decided that she should help her master out. Using a burst of pure speed, she weaved her way through the crowd, jumping off the shoulders of the other members and the furniture, and struck at the white-haired girl's sides with a few lightning-fast jabs. An uncharacteristic squeal was heard from Mary Jane as she let go and rubbed her sides, landing on her feet with ease. She turned to see Setsuna glaring at her, and frowned as she took a step forward. What was that for, you idiot? Can't stand to see me getting chummy with Naruto-kun? She teased, intentionally adding the kun suffix in an attempt to rile up the level-head Uchiha. She received a harsh smack to the head by Urza, who had a tick mark on her head while her cheeks were slightly flushed. That's what you get for acting like a psycho. Now apologize to Naruto-san, she demanded. The blonde had told her nothing but the truth, and she wanted their friendship to start off on a new leaf. What better way to do that than to stick up for him in his time of need? Before Mary Jane could retort, she stiffened when she felt two strong arms wrap themselves around her stomach and grab her developing breasts. Arching a brow, she turned to aim a smug grin at both Urza and Setsuna. Why not even an hour, and you want to do such naughty things to me? At least you've got good taste in women. She giggled as she placed her hands on his, pushing them further onto her. She didn't know whether she should be pleased that Naruto wanted to touch her growing B-cups or pissed that he had touched them without her permission, but the ki she felt emanating from the blonde behind her did not ease her at all. In fact, she felt uncharacteristically frightened, for she could see the terrified faces of the other mages in front of her, the slight tremble Setsuna's body made, and the wide, frightened eyes of Lisanna and Urza. Heck, even Natsu and Gray had stopped fighting and were huddling together, their arms wrapped around the other while Happy was nowhere to be seen. Naruto just chuckled darkly, his bangs casting a shadow over his eyes that enhanced the creepiness of the situation. You ask why? I'm not a person who'll just take whatever you dish out to me the next time you try something like that again. I won't hesitate to do the same to you, Mirachan. A Hanya mask appeared just behind the boy's face, a deep and terrifying voice resonating with Naruto's to produce a positively creepy voice. The mask was black and had 4 white spike-shaped marks stretched, 2 of them stopping by the forehead, and the other 2 stretching past the eyes and teeth, going past the chin. There were also small marks resembling a heart, but with the top and bottom open, extending from the inner corners of its eyes. It had no eyes, nothing but an endless black tunnel in them. What really scared everyone, as well as infuriated Setsuna, was the odd yet frightened look on Mirajane's face. Naruto was already scarier than Urza, but being able to frighten the dreaded demon of Fairy Tail herself? That was bad news. Makarov, who had been quietly watching the events play before him from his perch atop the stairs, let out a chuckle. That boy's going to be a real lady killer by the time he hits 15. Makes me wonder how long it'll take for him to get a fan club deciding it was time to step in to prevent any more alterations. Makarov leaped from the stairs and landed right in front of Naruto, who let up on his ki until there was no trace of it anywhere. Quirking an eyebrow, Naruto removed Samahata from the floor and ignored her complaining. What are you doing here? Don't you have more paperwork to attend to? He questioned as he strapped Samahata onto his back. Makarov waved the question away. To be honest, I was up there watching your little bonding moment back there, and I was wondering if you'd be interested in joining our guild. He paused to take a puff of smoke from his pipe. Fairy Tail has indeed been regarded as a popular choice for mages because we've produced so many spectacular mages in history. However, my grandson Laxus has a point about needing new blood in the guild. Fairy Tail hasn't been producing many noteworthy mages these past few years. Apart from a few special individuals, most mages only manage to hit A-class nowadays. S-class mages have become even rarer than before, and, from what you told me of your abilities, you could easily make that level. Hell, you might even be the first SS-class member of the guild. He stated unflinchingly, his voice conveying the strength of his belief. Will you join us, Naruto Setsuna? The guild is more than just a place for mages to work, it's also one big family, and I'm sure everyone would love to have you join. He asked. Naruto cocked a brow. If the guild is one big family, doesn't that mean that anyone who joins is immediately family's owned? If that's the case, then life must suck here for all the adult members. He asked, crossing his arms over his chest. Everyone face-faulted, Setsuna being the exception since she had also kinda wondered about that, and Makarov crawled to his feet, muttering darkly about the youth and how they were oversexed these days. There isn't a policy that prevents any intimate relationships from happening, so you won't have to worry about that, Makarov assured. The only policy we have that you need to take note of is our policy against killing. His eyes grew cold and commanding, no longer projecting an image of a grandfather figure. Naruto had to admit, Makarov's guild mode was almost identical to the Kage mode he had seen Bachan use. If there is no other option left for your survival, I wouldn't really mind if you kill your enemies. However, if you intentionally murder someone in cold blood, you will be immediately expelled from the guild and charged a hefty fine. Depending on the severity of the judges, you can spend at least 2 years and at most the rest of your life in jail. Naruto nodded solemnly. Don't worry about that. Setsuna and I won't kill unless we have no other alternative. Too bad I didn't include Samui, Konan and Enko on that list, he thought to himself. After all, an experienced ninja always kept his opportunities open. Urza stepped forward, a smirk tugging at the corner of her lips. So you plan on joining us, huh? Well, expect my challenge after you acquire your lodgings. I look forward to crossing blades with you, Uzumaki Naruto, she declared as she rested her hands on her hips. Natsu's head burst into flames at the thought of someone strong like him would be there for him to challenge. Oh man, I'm fired up, baby. He whipped his head to Lisana, who was standing next to her sister. Lisana-chan, I'm going to fight him. Wish me luck. Natsu, wait. Lisana called out, trying to get him to stop. Unfortunately. Hey, Blondie. I challenge you to a fight, right here, right now. The pink-haired boy declared, a huge grin on his face. Naruto took one look at him, blanched, and asked a question that popped into his mind. Is that your natural hair color? 'Cause I really don't think that pink is your thing. Have you tried dyeing it red or black? Naruto's sweat dropped when the boy's head burst into flames once again. The first time it happened, he had thought that it was simply his imagination that was the cause of that image. Apparently, this guy used fire. Huh. Natsu's display was put to an end when a gigantic fist slammed down on him, earning a low whistle from Gray. Not bad, fire breath, you managed to stay awake this time. Whoop the fucking do. You could almost taste the sarcasm in his voice. Makarov continued to grumble as he dispelled his Titan magic spell and his arm revered to its normal size. Take your silly fight out of the guild. I still haven't finished paying for all the repairs needed for the last time you fought here. But first, Naruto and Setsuna need to officially join the guild. See Lee-sana there so that she can officially induct you into the guild. He pointed to the girl standing next to Mary Jane, who could only be her sister, and carried off to his office once more. Approaching the girl, Naruto flashed an eye smile. Why hello there, allow me to introduce myself. I'm Uzumaki Naruto and the lady beside me is Uchiha Setsuna. Lee-sana gave a smile of her own to the two as led them towards the bar end. Nice to meet you Naruto-san. I'm Lee-sana Strauss, Mirane's little sister. If you don't mind me asking, what made you accept Master Makarov's offer? She asked as she started looking through a little drawer for something. For one, you guys seem cool and it would be great living with you guys. Secondly, I don't really expect any other guild to be so accepting of a new member, so I decided to take this opportunity while it was still open. Finally, Setsuna and I don't have a place to stay. Lee-sana nodded as she withdrew a stamp with the fairy tale insignia in the middle. Alright, where would you like to have your mark? She asked as she lifted it up. I'd like to have it on the back of my left hand, Setsuna announced, removing her limb from the confines of her cloak and presenting it to Lee-sana. I'd like it to be in black, please, she added as an afterthought. Barely a minute later and Setsuna was admiring her new tattoo. Turning to Naruto, Lee-sana raised the stamp once again. So where do you want it, Naruto? Naruto shrugged. Might as well have it in the same place as Setsuna, not original, but I don't really care. Could you have it black with a crimson outline? Sure, she chirped. Placing the stamp on his left hand, a pulse of magic soon left the desired imprint on the blonde shinobi's hand. Flexing the hand a couple of times, Naruto gave Lee-sana another eye smile. Thank you so much for it. It looks really good, he praised, affectionately ruffling her hair. Lee-sana blushed lightly as she smacked his hand away, a pout forming on her face. I don't look so annoyed. You should be used to it with how young you look. She just pouted harder and let out a huff. Why do I even bother, she mumbled as she received an order for 3 beers. Sorry Naruto, but I have to get back to work. Try not to kill my husband, okay? Naruto blinked. Your husband? You mean the guy with the pink hair? How did that happen? You're obviously not the required age for marriage, he questioned. I'll explain it to you when I'm not so busy. Bye. With that said, she disappeared within the crowd of mages. Locking eyes with Setsuna, Naruto gave a minute nod. Understanding what he was saying, Setsuna started heading over to him as she fingered the vial containing Sasuke's eyes. With his upcoming fight, it would be a good opportunity to get some feedback on his new eyes. Fairy Tale Grounds. Natsu was literally vibrating with excitement as he waited for Naruto to arrive so that they could start their fight. Happy had appeared shortly before and was once again munching on a fish as he watched Natsu get ready for his fight. Gray had decided to come watch Natsu get his ass handed to him as well as get a feel of what Naruto could do. Urza and Mary Jane had turned up as well, wanting to see what Naruto could do in a fight, though Mary Jane had a more personal reason to watch. What's taking Naruto so long? I want to fight him, damn it. Maybe you should simmer down until he comes, Natsu, Happy said, still managing to speak clearly despite his mouth being full of fish. Urza turned to see Mary Jane staring into space, murmuring words that she could barely make out. She caught the words Naruto-kun, all mine and those bitches, and promptly sweat dropped. From what she knew of Mary Jane, the white-haired devil would probably try and coerce Naruto into fighting her to prove her superiority. If she lost, which Urza was sure to be the case, she would just continue to pick fights with him until she won one. Naruto-san's life is just about to get interesting. A small crowd of people had gathered round, hearing word of the budding mage salamander about to fight a new member of the guild. From what they had heard, the guild master himself had proclaimed the new recruit capable of surpassing an S-class mage, and such a proclamation had caught their interest. After about 3 minutes, Naruto stepped out of the gates followed by Setsuna, the latter finally getting rid of her traveling cloak. She was quite lithe, her form an interesting blend of strength, speed and elegance. She wasn't so built that it detracted her beauty, nor was her body beautiful but weak. Her developing curves were highlighted by the tight clothing she wore, black pants that showed off her lovely legs, a purple sash that secured her sword, and a revealing navy blue robe with a large hemline on the front that exposed her arms, back, lateral part of her well-endowed breasts, and her belly. Many of the young girls in the crowd fought off the feeling of inadequacy when they really got a good look at Setsuna's chest. Most of them were B-cups, the notable exceptions being Urza, Mary Jane, Kana, Evergreen and a few others who ranged from a large B to a small C, but Setsuna was already at a large C cup. Stopping directly in front of Natsu, Naruto crossed his arms. So, you ready to get your ass handed to you? Natsu grinned in response. Just cut the chit-chat and show me what you got. Actions speak louder than words, you know, he declared as he hunkered down, thanking his stars that he had grabbed a bite to eat before. Naruto made no response to that and decided to kickstart the event. Kuchios no Jutsu, he called out as he slapped his hand to the earth. A puff of smoke obstructed the view for a brief second before a gust of wind revealed Naruto wielding a gunbai or war fan. The fan was purple with black trimmings and black tomo, connected to black chains that run up his right sleeve. Natsu didn't know what the blonde was planning to do with that fan, nor did he recognize any kind of equipped magic that occurred like that, but he didn't really care. Charging towards the blonde with considerable speed, the young dragon slayer cocked his hand back as he cast his spell. Fire Dragon's Iron Fist. A decent-sized fireball ignited over his clenched fist as he continued his path towards the still ninja, pumping more power into the attack to take him out in one blow. Naruto just shifted his posture slightly as he waited for Natsu to draw closer to him. Using the Sharingan seemed a bit too much for even Naruto, but he really wanted to see how much stronger his eye techniques had become. I'll play around with him for a bit before I use them. I just hope he doesn't overtax himself in trying to defeat me. Nodding to himself, Naruto blocked Natsu's punch with ease that scared Natsu. Calmly tightening his grip on the fan, Naruto stared into the wide eyes of Natsu. Yuki Higeshi, Uchiha return. A flick of his hand sent the fire mage flying backwards with impressive force through several trees, finally skidding to a halt several feet away. Going through a chain of one-hand seals, Naruto let loose another jutsu. Katon, Gokakyu no Jutsu. As Naruto spewed a massive fireball towards Natsu, he was surprised to see the boy make no move to avoid the attack. He was further surprised when he saw Natsu open his mouth and swallow the fire that licked at his body, eating it as though it was food. Wow, your fire tastes really good. It's almost as good as Ignil's own fire, he exclaimed. He punched his fists together as he crouched low, a grin on his face once more. Here it comes! Fire Dragon's Roar! A gargantuan torrent of flames was exhaled by the mage, racing towards the shinobi with rapid speed. Suetun, Suijin Hiki! A torrent of water erupted from his mouth and generated a massive blast of steam as the wall of water and the flame blast collided. Losing concentration from the surprise at seeing Naruto use water attacks, Natsu's spell ended abruptly. As he peered through the steam for Naruto's whereabouts, he was startled when he heard his voice from within the steam. Sorry Natsu, but I'm going to end this. Try and eat this. Amaterasu. Black flames shaped in the form of a roaring dragon bore down upon Natsu with fierce speed and viciousness. Barely managing to dodge the stream, Natsu curiously sucked in a bit of the strange fire to see what it tasted like. Meanwhile, the flames of Amaterasu dissipated as it arched into the skies away from the crowd. Within the thick steam, Naruto smirked as he saw Natsu eat the flames with his Mangekyo Sharingan. Bad move Natsu, curiosity killed the cat, and you're gonna learn that right about now. Natsu's cheeks bulged as he struggled to hold his composure. The flames he had eaten were doing something to him, making him feel as if he had taken in some kind of poison. A painful sensation in his stomach broke what little control he had over his heaving, and he vomited copious amounts of fire onto the earth, his stomach heaving in its quest to expel the foreign substance from it. What's going on? What did that fire do to me? Suetun, Suryuden no Jutsu. A low-powered water dragon formed using the water vapor in the atmosphere and slammed itself into the vomited flames, preventing a forest fire from starting. Don't worry about the flames, Natsu. I've already cancelled the technique. You should be feeling better soon. Natsu lifted his eyes to see Naruto step out of the steam, his gunbai slung over his shoulders as he strode towards the downed mage. Just as he had said, he could feel the burning within his belly simmer to a mild feeling of discomfort. Getting to his feet, Natsu glared at the blonde. What the hell was with that fire? Why did it hurt me when I have the lungs of a dragon? Filing that tidbit of information for another time, Naruto decided to answer his question. If enemy shinobi could monologue their life experiences and techniques in battle, why couldn't he do it? I'm not really sure I can explain it, but I'm guessing that the reason was your limited experiences with fire. The flames of Amaterasu are able to burn continuously for at least 7 days and 7 nights, so I suppose the strain it put your body was too much for you to handle. Naruto began to manipulate chakra once again as Natsu called on his fire magic to encase his hands. Let's settle this. Rasengan Barrage. Naruto charged, a spiraling sphere of pure chakra in each hand. Alright. Fire Dragon's Iron Fists. Natsu roared as he took off in a mad dash towards the approaching shinobi. They paid no attention to the cheering crowd, their attention was fixated on the inevitable clash that was about to occur. With a loud, incoherent scream, Natsu thrust his hands towards Naruto in the hopes of smashing his fists into the blonde. Ducking under the wild punches of Natsu, Naruto easily slipped through his guard and slammed the 2 Rasengans into him. Luckily for Natsu, Naruto had pumped only enough chakra to render the fire mage unconscious, otherwise he would have been gutted by the combined force of the A-rank jutsu. As Natsu felt the world turning black and his chest screaming in agony, he felt a smile appear on his lips. Naruto, I'll get stronger than this, strong enough to beat even you one day. Until then, let's fight each other some more. It was real fun. As Natsu was about to fall to the ground, he was caught by Naruto and gently carried by the shinobi. It might be because I see myself in you, it might be because you've got the drive and determination to get stronger, it might even be for a reason I don't understand yet, but I feel that you're gonna play a big part in the coming years. Naruto thought as he slung Natsu's arm over him and started heading towards the crowd. I'll do my best to make sure that all of you grow strong enough to forge through the trials of life, my friend. He smiled as he handed Natsu over to a worried Lisana, assuring her that he was alright. Makarov, watching the entire fight through a crystal ball, let a smile grace his aged face. It seems Naruto was already settling into his life as a member of Fairy Tail. Chapter 5, Change in Fate. Makarov sighed deeply as he sank into his seat, the comfort of his beloved chair easing a bit of the headache he was developing. He closed his eyes and angled his pipe such that it would hang limply in his mouth yet not fall, allowing himself to be swept by the lull of the moment, and feeling grateful for the rare opportunity to just relax without the constant challenges that life threw his way. So much for taking it easy, he thought, still in that zen-like state of relaxation. The chirping of birds in the afternoon made his lips twitch. At this rate, it'll be decades before I can hand the mantle of guild master to someone else. Unfortunately, all good things must come to an end, and Makarov's peace was disturbed by the obstinate thoughts in his head regarding the young Namikes. He had been watching the little spar he and Natsu had, somewhat curious as to see how a shinobi actually fought. The results were quite impressive. Makarov was skilled enough to see that Naruto had been holding back against the young dragon slayer. If I were to go by what he told me, Natsu wouldn't pose a challenge to him at all, neither would quite a number of the mages here, too. He quirked his eyebrows in thought as he recalled the last jutsu Naruto used on Natsu. What was it again? Raisin Rasengan? He murmured. From what he had seen, it looked like a spinning ball of energy that packed enough power to seriously damage his opponents. His people must have been really something if they can do stuff like that. He muttered. In his opinion, the shinobi system he had learned from Naruto did not sit right with him. Using children as young as Lisana on jobs that could end up being their last? Inbreeding to ensure the continuation of a bloodline limit, despite the risks it carried? Constant warfare as a result of the pettiest reactions between two hidden villages and human greed? And to think that he's only just began adolescence, it's like shinobi have been groomed for S-class jobs since the start of their career. He opened his eyes and raised his head from its reclining position to view the latest headache inducer he had received. On his desk was a report he had been writing, to be sent to the Magic Council as soon as he was done. As a member of the 10 Wizard Saints, he was obligated to send reports to them on any unusual activity that occurred in the vicinity of their guilds, and Acnologia's appearance was definitely unusual. He wasn't going to mention its title in the report. After all, the fewer who knew, the better. However, Naruto's actions would surely catch the attention of the council members. After all, who had ever tamed a dragon before? Who could use space-time techniques like he had? Such a powerful and unknown ability would draw their eyes to him, either to observe him and try to gain his loyalty, or to find a way to destroy him. Makarov frowned as he continued staring at the report. What should I do? The whole guild and civilians have already seen Naruto transport Acnologia to another dimension, and it would be disastrous if the report does not match that of the witnesses. He continued staring at the report for many minutes, deep in thought. After 10 minutes of silent contemplating, a twinkle appeared in his eyes as a grin appeared on his face. Well now, why didn't I think of that before? This will definitely satisfy them, and keep them off my backs long enough to have some peace. With that, the guild master began to write with enthusiasm. Guild Hall. Natsu! Don't die already! I still need someone to catch my fish for me. Happy wailed as he flew over the injured boy with comical tears streaming down his oddly shaped head. He continued bawling, paying no mind to the fact that Natsu was alive, awake and looking at him with a few tick marks forming on his head. Gray, who was standing next to the duo, chose that moment to add his own comment. Don't worry, Happy. I'm sure we can find another glorified match to cook your meals for you. Natsu was in his face faster than most people could blink, pressing his forehead against the ice mage. You mind repeating that again, Snowman? Gray pushed his forehead against Natsu's, his gaze and demeanor suddenly aggressive. You heard me the first time, idiot. What are you gonna do about it? Natsu pushed back with equal vigor, flames bursting into existence within his eye sockets. I'm gonna kick your ass, that's what I'm gonna go. And with a roar, another scuffle started between the two teen mages while everyone else went on with their business. Natsu, stop this instant. You're going to reopen your wounds. Lisana cried out, nervously wringing her hands together as she saw Natsu take a vicious punch from Gray. After watching the two continue fighting regardless of her dry, Lisana started to get annoyed. Natsu! Stop now! The boys continued rolling around, throwing punches and kicks at any part they could get. Lisana ran her fingers through her hair and growled as she advanced towards them. One of these days, I swear he's gonna get in trouble for that habit, she muttered. Watching the interaction between the three was Naruto, propped up on a stool with a glass of sake in his hand. Watching the two boys, he had a brief sense of nostalgia of the days when Team 7 was still together. If he were to allocate the trio with the characteristics, he would say that Gray would be the Sasuke equivalent, always welcoming a chance to prove he was superior to Natsu. Lisana would be the one to break up the fight, something Sakura always did, though Lisana most probably wouldn't be biased towards one of them. Natsu reminded Naruto of himself, the hot-headed member who was loud and used any chance he got to try and one-up his rival. He snapped out of his contemplation as he saw Lisana's hand transform into a long, multicolored tentacle as she reached the duo, who were currently engaged in a headlock. Both of you cut it out. Now! With a particularly vicious swipe, Natsu and Gray let out shrill shrieks as her jellyfish-like tentacles sent a series of jolts coursing through their body. Both ended their headlocks in favor of making spamming motions, which made them look even more comical than when they were fighting. Naruto chuckled as he watched Lisana chew Natsu and Gray out, taking a sip of his alcoholic drink despite the fact that his mask was in the way. What he had discovered from Kakashi's memories was that the material used in tailoring the mask somehow made it possible for food and drink to be consumed without having to remove it. The details of the material were sketchy, since Kakashi had been pretty young when he started wearing it, and hadn't been in the mood to listen to them, but it explained why the man never seemed to take his mask off whenever he treated Naruto to ramen. Then that time we tried to make him remove his mask, he must have been trolling us. Things sure were fun back then. The guild hall was noticeably quieter than before, since most of the mages had gone on job requests. Apparently the afternoon requests were much more rewarding than the morning ones, and they also seemed to be greater in numbers. At the moment, only about 20 members remained in the hall, Setsuna and he included. Speaking of Setsuna, she was speaking to another female in one corner, looking fairly interested in something the female was showing her. Judging by the animated gestures of the brunette, as well as the glimpse he managed to get, it was something to do with cards. After watching them for a few more moments, Naruto recalled the name of the girl. That's Kana Alberona. Wonder what she and Setsuna-chan are talking about. Naruto-san, is something the matter? Lisana asked as she dragged a quiet Natsu back to her seat next to the blonde. Naruto stared at her and made a motion for her to come closer. She seemed unsure at first, no doubt she was thinking of something far from what he was about to do to her. After a moment, she decided to heed his request and drew closer to his form. Ayano is there. Poke. A sharp flick to her forehead prompted a surprised cry from the girl as she stumbled back, rapidly blinking her eyes at the action. Naruto smiled at the adorably confused look on her face whilst Natsu looked torn between roasting Naruto alive and leaving him to Lisana. That girl could be pretty scary at times. In case you were wondering, that was for attaching a suffix to my name. Call me Naruto, adding san makes me feel old. Naruto mentally snickered at his statement. To answer your question, I was wondering how accommodation was catered for. Is there a place where guild members stay, or do they need to pay for their own lodgings around town? Lisana's eyes brightened. Well, since you're new here, I didn't really expect you to know this, but the guild only serves as a place where job requests are displayed and taken. There aren't any free lodgings here, so I'd suggest you go on a few jobs and earn some money before thinking about looking for an apartment, she said. Naruto just managed to hide his snort. Pay rent to live somewhere? No thank you, he had done enough of that as a kid and that option was definitely off his list. I'll keep that in mind, he said, his thoughts wandering towards other matters. So how are requests carried out? Are they usually done by individuals or can they be done in groups? Happy, who had been strangely quiet throughout the exchange, floated before Naruto. Allow me to explain, Even though everyone in the guild is allied to one another, some members that get along really well get together and form teams within the guild. That way, jobs that may be hard for one person to take can be done by a team. Naruto nodded his head at Happy's explanation. Cool, that sounds a bit like what I used to do back home. He ignored the curious looks he was getting from Lisana and the eavesdropping Natsu and rose from his seat. Sending a wink to the girl, Naruto started to head towards the request board. Well, I'm off to find something interesting to do. See ya. He waved. Natsu leapt after the blonde with gusto. Hold up, Naruto. How about you? Me and Happy go pick a. The vibrant dragon slayer froze and started rapidly sweating when a dainty hand gripped his shoulder with strength that impossibly defied the image the hands themselves gave of a fragile girl. An oppressive weight fell on his shoulders as the temperature around him dropped to chilling levels and Natsu could swear that the air around him was getting darker with each passing second. His head started to turn robotically towards the source of it all, as if it was an instinctive reaction ingrained within him to face the demon before he died. Lisana's eyes were closed and a beautiful smile was plastered onto her face, making her angelic features even more pronounced. In contrast, the evil aura that she exuded made her appearance even more unnerving. Natsuko-kun, what did I say about overexerting yourself? Naruto smiled as he headed away from the two, moving closer to the request board. Well. Seems love is in the air for those two, or at least for Lisanna. Stopping in front of his objective, Naruto let his eyes wander over the various requests that were pinned on the mahogany board. Let's see now. Finding a magic bracelet? Too easy. Reading someone's love horoscope? No thanks, please. Hunting a volcano demon? Naruto kept his eye on that particular request for a moment. Let's put that in the seriously considering category for now. Looking for a job already? Naruto turned to see Mary Jane approaching him with amusement on her face. She drew up next to him and smirked. If you want, you could partner up with Elfman and I. We were on our way to check out this particular request. She handed him the request sheet and crossed her arms as he read. Naruto's brow tilted slightly as he went over the job request. So we're going to deal with some demon infestation in a place called Shiritsum Town. Nice, I get to break something. His eyes widened slightly as he read the reward for the job. 2,200,000 jewels for each demon we can deal with? That's certainly some incentive. He lifted his eyes from the sheet and quirked them at Mira. Not to sound ungrateful, but why exactly do you want me to come with you? Shouldn't you be partnering with someone whose skill set you know rather than an unknown factor? Mary Jane shot him a small scowl. The only other person I would choose would be Lisanna, but she's been pretty busy this past week and I don't want her to be stressed. Besides, from that fight with Natsu, I can see that you're capable of holding your own in a fight. She replied, a tiny bit of irritation bleeding into her voice. Also, as your senpai in the guild, I have to show you the ropes on how we fairy tale mages work. Naruto felt a sweat drop form. I didn't ask for a senpai. I know maybe Urza-san would be a better option. She seems to be more reliable. He blinked as a tick mark formed on Mary Jane's face. Huh! Mary Jane's words were low and cold, yet Naruto could easily hear them. That ugly prude already went on some dumbass job, so you're gonna have to stick with me. Besides, I'm far better than that uptight cunt. She scoffed at him, her blue eyes cold yet sly as she peered at him. Seeing him open his mouth once more, Mary Jane quickly cut him off. Alright, enough chit-chat. Meet us at the gate in half an hour, and you better not be late. With that said, she quickly marched away. Naruto sighed as he read over the request once again. Well, I do need some money. He paused as a question formed in his mind. And who is Elfman? Fairy tale gates. Mary Jane paced across the gates of the guild with barely concealed irritation, whilst Elfman just leaned against them, arms crossed as he stared in the sky in wait for their third member. The middle sibling was a tall young man with the same white hair styled into a messy bowl cut and blue eyes as Mary Jane and Lisanna. His skin was tanned unlike his sister's, who had pale skin, and he wore a dark blue jacket with purplish blue inners, held closed on the front by a line of large buttons, with similar buttons on the sleeves back and the zip located on the high collar left open. The back of his jacket is adorned by large, light kanji, which read the greatest, and the jacket itself seems to be worn over a light red shirt, sometimes seemingly replaced by an A-shirt covered in many vertical lines. Elfman's outfit was completed by loose pants matching his jacket, held up by a simple belt, and traditional Japanese geta sandals, held in place by bands colored the same as his jacket's inners. He waited patiently as his big sister continued pacing, her murderous mutters floating into his ears and causing a quick smile to grace his lips. I've never seen her this interested in anyone before. He must be something to catch Mirane's attention. Arif. Where is that lazy bum? He should have been here an hour ago. Mary Jane's patience at an end, the young teen began spewing curses and words that were enough to make Elfman, the manliest man in the guild, cringe in sympathy as he listened to her violent descriptions of what she would do to Naruto. Yo, am I late? Naruto asked as he appeared in a whirlwind of leaves. He dodged a charge from the angry girl and maneuvered his way such that each punch she sent towards him was easily slapped away without harming any unfortunate bystander. You're late, asshole. Well, the thing is... What? I got lost on the highway to hell, so I backed up and tried again. Only the next time, I ran into a black cat, so I had to walk around Fiore 7 times to make sure I didn't get any bad luck. Mary Jane spluttered in anger at the ridiculous story Naruto was spouting at her and renewed her furious barrage. Liar! Shiritsum Town. The three individuals stopped in front of a huge mansion, Naruto eyeing the place with narrowed slit eyes. Surrounding the palace was a series of slender trees sitting casually on the grass, while behind it a small lake and a massive rocky formation were visible. As they got closer to the doors, Naruto started up a conversation with Elfman while Mary Jane moved further away from the blonde. No doubt she was still upset at his tardy ways. So, what kind of magic do you use? Naruto probed as they made their way towards Mary Jane. Well, my sisters and I use takeover magic. Seeing the confusion in Naruto's eyes, he elaborated further. Takeover allows the user to take over the power of a creature or person and use it to fight. It can increase the power, strength, and speed of the caster, sometimes adding a new skill such as flying or swimming. He refrained from exploring the other aspects of his magic and entered the building with Mary Jane. Naruto noted the reaction to the subject of his magic and followed the siblings. As he made his way through the mansion to the room they were supposed to meet the client in, he couldn't help but admire the structure. This guy must obviously be loaded him. Soon they entered a room, which Naruto recognized as the library. It had all of its walls segmented into long vertical sections, adorned by bookshelves packed full of books, some of which sported ladders to reach their upper shelves. A large desk, complete with a chair and some pens, was present, along with a light, semicircular sofa, which in its hollow part housed a round table, and had 2 round lamps nearby, on one side. 2 more, large lamps sporting small spheres secured to them by ropes hang from special hollow parts in the ceiling, which was covered in square tiles. Near to the door granting access to the room is a closet, flanked by another, smaller desk paired with a chair. Sitting on the sofa was the client. He was a short, plump, ugly man with skinny arms and legs. He sported a curled mustache which directly protruded from his nostrils, and a bushel of wavy hair atop his round head. He wore a formal black suit, with his jacket fastened with a large gold button and adorned with a decorative red flower. Beneath his jacket was a white collared shirt and a blue necktie. Naruto decided that he didn't mind entertaining killing the man in the near future. After he had bled all his resources dry from him, of course. Boyle, it would seem that fairy tale mages are as unpunctual as they are undisciplined. I had been waiting for you to arrive for the past hour. Sweet Kami, even his voice annoyed Naruto. As if that wasn't bad enough, he was getting the evil eye from Mirachan. We were held up, thanks to this idiot. Mary Jane pointed at Naruto, who tilted his head in acknowledgement. Your job request said that you were suffering from a demon infestation, but you never did specify what kind of demon you had. Elfman looked interested as well while Naruto just shrugged. After all, what did it matter? After dealing with Kurama and the other Bijou, anything else was a piece of cake. Shiritsum Mountains. Aergrug. I can't believe that bastard had the gall to hype the request. He had a fucking Vulcan problem? Naruto stared in bemusement as he watched Mary Jane take her frustration out on an unfortunate rock, pounding the poor thing with rage-enhanced blows that were rapidly breaking it apart. He turned to Elfman, who was watching his sister with a nervous smile, and asked the question on his mind. Is this how she always gets, or is there something I don't happen to know? Elfman just laughed nervously as Mary Jane finished reducing the rocks to rubble, her anger finally spent. I can't say for sure, but she seemed to be anticipating this request quite badly. Finding out that the demons are just Vulcans, I suppose I would feel annoyed as well, he replied, scratching his head in thought. Naruto sighed as a breeze started to pick up. A wary feeling started spreading through his being as his eyes began to narrow. I have a bad feeling about this, he thought to himself. Chapter 6, Take Over Troubles Part 1. Naruto and Elfman made their way towards the less dense southern sector of the Shiritsum Mountains whilst Mary Jane covered the western sector. Since the area wasn't so big, only about 2 hectares or so, they weren't really worried about getting lost. If they did happen to lose track of their way, Naruto could use an animal summoned to track their scent. That, or he could just do so himself, but that would lead to a few awkward questions that he didn't want to answer so soon. Anyways, after a brief discussion between the trio, it was decided that Naruto would be accompanied by Elfman since he was unfamiliar with the terrain. Naruto didn't mind at all. Elfman seemed like an alright person and he wanted to get to know another guild member besides those he met earlier in the day. Also, Elfman had camped in the area not too long back, which made him the perfect guide. From what Naruto had seen of the mountains, there hardly seemed to be any life in the area and the atmosphere was quite dry. After a few moments of silence, excluding the rustling sounds made as the two brushed past vegetation, Naruto decided to get the conversation rolling. So, Elfman, how long have you and your sisters been in Fairy Tail? He casually spoke out as he formed a Kage bunch in a few meters behind them. That feeling he had felt not long ago was stirring up again, and Naruto had learned a long time ago that paranoia was useful in keeping more than a few shinobi alive until they were in their old ages. Since Naruto had been mastering most of his jutsu to the point where he could perform them with only 3-hand seals, it was relatively easy for a shinobi of his caliber to distract Elfman from noticing anything. The clone seamlessly blended into the background, its Rinnegan eyes feeding information to its creator as it scoured the surroundings. Elfman paused for a second before continuing through the path. Well, it really hasn't been that long since we joined the guild, he said almost thoughtfully as they searched for any signs of the Vulcans. I suppose we arrived about 1.5 years ago. Back then, we weren't as good with magic as we are now and our parents had passed on. We had no place to go and no clue as to how to control or magic. He paused to leap over a boulder and continued. So, when Mirene heard about Fairy Tail being the strongest guild, she talked us into joining. It also helped that Fairy Tail was the closest guild. He chuckled. Naruto nodded, avoiding the topic of their parents. So, out of curiosity, who exactly are the big players within the guild? Elfman gave him an approving nod. Scoping out the competition to know where you stand. That's good, I was hoping to have another guildmate who thought like a real man. Ignoring the curious looks Naruto was giving him, Elfman proceeded to lecture him on the mages that stood out within the guild. Let's start from the bottom and work our way up. From what I've heard, you beat that Natsu pretty easily, so you're already better than a good chunk of those in the guild. Now, Macau. Shiritsum Mountains, Mary Jane. Mary Jane scowled as she flew across the western sector of the location. Her large bat-like wings elevated her through the skies with powerful flaps, giving her a perfect view of Shiritsum town. Normally, she would have enjoyed the peace and sight, but due to Duke Everlu's request, it only served to make her angry. That fucking prick, she made a mental note to get back at him. Maybe I should blow up that mansion of his. An evil glint appeared in her eyes as she imagined the look on his face. A glimpse of movement snapped her out of her daydreams, and she swooped lower to get a better view. Staying high enough that she would be hidden by the clouds, but low enough to get a good view, Mary Jane narrowed her eyes as she spotted 3 forest vulcans leaping through the trees at decent speeds. All of them were quite large, easily twice as big as any ordinary vulcan. Vulcans usually appeared to be large, anthropomorphic monsters that resemble primates. They possessed distinct facial features, elongated chins, prolonged ears, and pointed heads that resembled a single horn on top of their head. Vulcans had gargantuan arms and, sequentially, large hands that attached to their muscular torsos. In comparison to their upper body, they possessed a pair of smaller scaled legs that feature a long tail connected to the bottom of their torsos. Mary Jane frowned as she took off after them. Forest vulcans usually resided in vast, deep forests, so what were they doing in an area that was obviously unsuitable for them? She flapped her wings and took off after them, eyeing them with curiosity. Were there more Gorians in the mountains that Everlu hadn't warned them of? The mission request stated that there was a demon infestation. Vulcans, no matter how many, could be dealt with rather easily for any mage above B rank. Mary Jane eyebrows furrowed as she puzzled over the mission. After a few minutes of silent contemplating, she frowned heavily when no plausible reason presented itself. What exactly is going on here? If she had been more aware of her surroundings, she would have noticed a flying creature veer off towards the north to report to its master. Western Sector, Naruto. Naruto hummed to himself as he thought about the strongest people in the guild. He had known that Makarov was the strongest. He was the guild master, the one who watched over and protected all those in the guild. How could he not be the strongest? The Titan magic Elfman had described to him reminded him vividly of his own Akimichi body-expanding jutsu, though there were a few differences between the two. Gray was also included in the list, though that was more to do with his potential than his current strength. He used ice magic, a caster-type magic that utilized the element of ice. Gray used static ice make, a type of ice magic that was characterized by the creation of inanimate objects like weapons or by affecting the environment around them. However, when Naruto compared that to his own Hayatan Kekkei Genkai, it fell short. It wasn't that ice magic was weaker than Hayatan. Hayatan was superior only because Naruto could create anything with it, whilst ice mages used either static or dynamic ice make. Mikao Kanbolt was another mage that Elfman had included in his list. The man was an adept at using purple flare, a magic that allowed to conjure flames that couldn't be doused by wind or water. He mentally snorted at that. I bet I could do that easily. The most prominent names that caught Naruto's attention were Laxus Dreyer, the grandson of Makarov, and Gildarts Clive, Fairy Tail's ace. From Elfman's description, Laxus was a lightning mage who was considered to be one of the strongest of the younger generation, and rumored to be a strong contender for the S-class exams. However, Laxus' attitude towards his comrades did not impress Naruto at all. He sounded a bit like Danzo, something that irked Naruto greatly. I'll have to keep an eye on him, and make sure he doesn't cause any unnecessary trouble like the team did. Unfortunately, Elfman hadn't met Gildarts in person, so he couldn't say for sure what magic he used. Several rumors were whispered in the guild whenever his name was brought up, making it nigh impossible for the accurate details to be discerned. Still, almost everyone in the guild acknowledged Gildarts as the strongest. That meant that his magic would be very powerful and that he was quite experienced in combat. Naruto idly wondered how Gildarts would fare against someone like the Sandame Raikage. He probably might not survive. Clearing his thoughts and focusing once more on the job, Naruto halted as Elfman suddenly stopped in his tracks. Peering at the tall boy, Naruto could see that his eyes had narrowed and a grin was spreading on his face. Naruto-san, it seems we found them. He slowly settled into a crouch whilst Naruto scanned the area until he finally saw them. A dozen or so Gorians, about 20 meters ahead of them, were foraging through the meager vegetation for something. They acted like a herd, with 2 or 3 of them keeping an eye out for predators whilst the rest searched for fruits and other edibles. Hey, Elfman, Naruto whispered as he silently crept closer. Do these Vulcans usually live in herds? As he questioned his teammate, his Kage Bunshin was silently creeping up to one particularly adventurous Gorian which was at the farthest point away from the rest of them. Elfman frowned slightly. No, they usually live alone. Some happen to form groups, but even then the most you should expect would be 4. For this many to have formed a coalition doesn't make any sense. He began to gather his magical energy as he flexed his right arm, his eyes fixed on the biggest one in the pack. However, our job was to get rid of them, so all these questions aren't really relevant. He cracked his knuckles as his legs tensed, ready to burst through their cover and attack. Naruto shrugged as he also started moving towards them. Whatever you say, big guy. Do you mind if I handle the left flank? They might not be as big as those on your side, but since I need the experience, I'll let you handle the tougher ones. It really didn't matter whether he took on the smaller ones or the bigger ones. The only thing he wanted to do was to test out the effects of his techniques on these native Earthland creatures. Besides, he was also curious about Elfman's abilities. By letting him handle the stronger ones, he was more likely to get a good read on his fighting style than he would have if Elfman were to take the smaller fry. Elfman gave him a grin, obviously happy that he was allowed to fight the stronger ones. Knowing your limits and taking on the challenges that are not above your skills just like a real man. Thank you for placing your well-being in my hands. I'll definitely protect you, because I'm a real man. He charged towards the Gorian herd, his yells surprising them greatly as they stopped doing whatever it was they were doing and watched as he charged towards the biggest member. Beast Arm, Black Bull. As Elfman leaped towards his target and drew his right hand back, he focused a great deal of magic into his limb. The arm morphed quickly, transforming the tan human arm into a large, black arm of an unknown beast that was several times bigger than Elfman's original one. With a loud cry, Elfman bashed his huge fists right into the Gorian's face. The beast's face caved inwards momentarily before it was sent flying with impressive force through a nearby tree. As it crashed through the vegetation, the others seemed to come out of their trance-like states and began charging towards him with various war cries. Beast Arm, Iron Bull. This time, his left arm transformed into a large metal fist, only slightly leaner than his right hand, and charged towards the closest Vulcans. Catching them in a brutal clothesline that lifted them off their feet, Elfman managed to wrap his fingers around their damaged throats, and hurled them one after the other towards the rest of the group. He charged towards them once again, his fists raised and ready to dish out some pain. Naruto sighed at his partner's rash actions, but chalked it up to the craziness that all fairy tale members seemed to exhibit. Lazily strolling towards his victims, he casually weaved 3 hand seals and activated a D-rank genjutsu on the closest target. The genjutsu was designed to invert all sense of direction, up and down, left and right as well as forward and backward were reversed. However, it wasn't only their sense of direction that changed. The opponent's eyesight, direction of incoming attacks and injury locations were also inverted. A smirk briefly appeared on his face as he felt the Sakasama no Sekai, inverted world, take effect on the group. Since he was only testing them, Naruto felt no need to kill them so quickly. Now that I know genjutsu still works, time to test out ninjutsu on them. Unfortunately, Naruto couldn't risk using his more deadly techniques whilst so close to Elfman. The Strauss was a good man, if somewhat eccentric, but Naruto didn't even know him for a day. Trust had to be established first before he could consider sharing a few of his secrets. He couldn't risk allowing his battle prowess and techniques being heard of by the more unsavory people that existed in this world. While he liked Fairy Tail and his new guildmates, the fact that they liked to boast about their magic didn't sit well with him. Sure, within the guild it was encouraged to let them know some measure of yourself to effectively complete mission requests in teams, but literally explaining what their magic did in front of other mages that opposed them. He wasn't like that anymore. After quickly deciding which jutsu to test out, Naruto gathered chakra as 3 Gorians stumbled towards him with panicked expressions on their faces, no doubt experiencing the unpleasant feeling of losing your sense of direction. Futon de Tapa, Wind Release, Great Breakthrough. Unlike his previous life, he made no attempt to shout his techniques in a battle. Like most of the more experienced shinobi he had assimilated, he usually kept silent as he cast his jutsu. At the moment, there wasn't any particular reason why he had reverted to his former habit. He just felt like doing it. The Gorians were blasted away by a large gust of wind that blew them completely away from the rest of their herd. Naruto had used only the minimum amount of chakra to activate the jutsu, but even so, the effects were impressive. Ignoring the damage done to the surroundings, Naruto flashed through 3 more hand seals. Doton Kekai, Doro Domu, Earth Release Barrier, Earth Prison of Magnificent Nothingness. The earth rumbled as Naruto's chakra was poured into it, shaping it into a large dome that erupted with the force of a speeding bullet. Already disoriented by Naruto's genjutsu as well as the Great Breakthrough, the Vulcans were unprepared for the dome that surrounded them and quickly found themselves trapped inside the dark and cramped dome of hardened earth. A sigh left Naruto's mouth as he lazily closed the distance between himself and the dome. The last technique he was going to use was one he had managed to learn only because he had managed to bring back to Remi-Mei, the Godame Mizukage as his animal path. As he neared the dome, he lessened the chakra distribution in an area which resulted in that patch of rock loosening until it fell off. Giving the captured monsters no chance at all, Naruto released a cloud of corrosive mist that immediately began to corrode the earth dome. Inside it, Naruto could hear the shrieks and cries of pain and terror as the volcans were literally melted to goo. After blowing more mist for half a minute or so, Naruto finally let up when the sound vanished altogether. With his task done, Naruto released the earth barrier and returned it to its original dust form. Paying no attention to the bloody remnants of the Gorians, he spun around and proceeded to head back towards Elfman. Western Sector, Mary Jane. Mary Jane grunted as she none too gently slammed the last Gorian straight through the earth headfirst. Surrounding her were dozens of Gorians that lay on the ground, either unconscious or dead. Whilst it wasn't particularly gory, Mary Jane had been brutal nonetheless in her decimation of the herd. A number of them had limbs that were stuck painfully at odd angles, others had half their bodies littered with deep burns, and a few of them even had deep gashes that bled alarmingly into their fur, staining it bright red. Mary Jane let go of the unfortunate Gorian in her hands and slumped slightly in small relief, absently wiping the flecks of blood that had gotten on her off. Thankfully, she only had to resort to the partial takeover spell in her fight. She may have managed to achieve the full takeover before her siblings, but she was nowhere near mastering it. Not only was it draining on her magic reserves, but she couldn't use it for more than 2 fights without putting a great deal of strain on her body. After all, each time she activated her Satan soul, she rapidly aged from the body of a 13-year-old to that of a young woman. She was no doctor, but she could safely assume that constant usage of that spell would be bad for her health. Man, that wasn't as exciting as I thought it would be. Then again, they are just forest volcans, she muttered disdainfully. Shaking her head, she stopped as she felt a familiar magic spike in the western sector. Her eyes widened in shock as the magic signature became warped and steadily vile, like a miasma. Damn it, Elfman! Her wings appeared in an instant, and she kicked off towards her brother's location, praying that she would make it in time to save her brother and friend. Elfman 10 minutes before. Elfman punched another Gorian using his transformed arm and ducked underneath a telegraph tackle that, if connected, would have sent him rolling several meters. The Gorian righted itself in midair and landed heavily on the ground, snarling at the white-haired youth that had defeated its companions. However, Elfman was already moving with deceptive speed towards it. As he neared the Gorian, it lashed out with its longer arms in an attempt to catch him off guard. Elfman just leaped over the Vulcan, his momentum carrying his form over the surprised Gorian. Whilst in mid-jump, Elfman twisted his form to the side and drew his leg back. Beast leg, black horse. He kicked right at the Gorian's exposed nape as his leg contorted into a horse's foot, complete with a hoof and over 2 feet long. The result was Elfman's foot burying itself into the Gorian's neck with a sickening crack as the magically enhanced hoof broke through the spinal cord. The Gorian crashed to the ground lifelessly whilst Elfman landed in a disoriented heap nearby. That he coughed as a thin cloud of dust entered his mouth, kicked up by his failed landing. Is how a real man does things. He choked out in between coughs. His cough persisted for a minute more before Elfman felt comfortable enough to move about. As he picked himself up, the sound of footsteps alerted him to Naruto's arrival. Lifting his head up, he managed to catch the sight of Naruto strolling towards him looking as pristine as he had been. A delighted smile broke out on Elfman's face. Naruto-san. I see you've already finished up your group. Did you happen to experience any problems? He questioned. Naruto shook his head as his Kage Bunshin dispelled. No, they were rather easy to beat. How about you, did you gain any injuries? He asked as he sorted the memories that his clone had accumulated throughout the battle. Well. Looks like you two have been busy. The unfamiliar voice immediately set Elfman on edge and Naruto just narrowed his eyes. He had sensed the beings that had surrounded them as Elfman had been greeting him, but made no attempt to warn him in order to determine their target. Turning to face the individual who spoke, Naruto arched a brow as he took in the man's physical appearance. The man was of medium height, and wore a white baboon-like outfit that hid every part of his body. The baboon mash was a light blue color, and when Naruto gazed into the holes of it, he saw 2 red eyes with white pupils and blue eye shadow. Hearing a gasp from Elfman, Naruto twisted his head slightly to keep the mysterious man in his sights while peering at Elfman from the corners of his eyes. What's the matter, Elfman? Who is he? He asked as he readied himself for confrontation. Masked characters usually had some motive to hiding their identity. They were either famous throughout the lands, infamous for crimes that were extreme in nature, or did so out of necessity. I am Naraku, the Daiyukai of the Assassination Guild Death's Head Caucus. Pleased to make your acquaintance. He finished his introduction with a little bow as Naruto activated his seals and released Samahata. Naraku didn't seem to be fazed by the appearance of the chakra blade. If anything, he seemed amused by Naruto's actions. That's quite an interesting blade, little man. Tell me, can it stand up against my lizardmen? Figures blurred out from the surrounding vegetation to appear in a circle around Naruto and Elfman, cutting any possible chance of escape. They were masculine, humanoid lizard-like creatures with spiked scales covering their bodies. A large plate covered their head whilst manes of hair grew from places ranging from the top of their skull to their back. Naruto scowled as Samahada's bandages unwrapped themselves by some mental calm man and hefted the blade onto his shoulder. So you went through all this trouble to fight us, huh? Don't I feel special? Naraku tilted his head in amusement. You should. After all, not every new mage gets to meet someone like me so early in their career. However, hidden behind the mask, his ruby eyes glowed malevolently. Why don't we make this more interesting? Faster than Naruto expected, but still slower than Naruto's own speed, Naraku's arm was thrust out and a pink object was speeding towards them. Naruto's first instinct was to send the item into his pocket dimension, but doing so would reveal more of his skills to their enemy, whom Naruto could not afford to make mistakes against. During his first year after the Fourth Great Shinobi War, he had discovered that all those that were resurrected by the Edo Tensei were more careless with their bodies since they could just regenerate any wound that they received. Doing so made them more complacent, which at the time was a godsend for the allied shinobi forces, and made Naruto determined to keep his edge despite having a body under the effects of Edo Tensei. He could not afford to put himself in the spotlight at the moment. He wasn't ready for that kind of attention just yet. He blinked as he deliberately stopped himself from derailing the object, which was soon embedded within Elfman's chest. Sorry about that, Elfman, but unfortunately, Makarov and I can't allow any more of my abilities to be discovered. As Elfman immediately sank to his knees and cried out in pain, Naruto sensed the pink energy of whatever it was in Elfman turned black and evil. Then all hell broke loose. Chapter 7, Take Over Troubles Part 2. The explosion of highly concentrated magic was not what Naruto was expecting. Instead of a huge flare of sinisterly colored energy to expel itself from Elfman, the explosion was simply a rather violent transformation. Sure, there was a dramatic spike in Elfman's magical output and a transformation of said energy from friendly yet fierce to malevolent and angry, but Naruto was surprisingly disappointed. The Jubi, at the moment of its transformation, evolved from its grotesquely bloated, round body with spiky protrusions growing out of its back to a lean, misshapen monster with elongated body proportions, an emaciated twisting neck, its tails ending in hands and its head having the ear on its right side, the mouth on the left side and eye in the middle. It certainly wasn't an improvement, but, at the very least, it was dramatic. Come to think of it, most transformations undergone by shinobi were dramatic. Orochimaru's Yamata no Jutsu, 8 branches technique, transformed him into a giant white serpent bigger than Manda with 8 heads and 8 tails. Hashigaki Kisame's fusion with Samahada turned him into a huge shark man, complete with fins, webbed hands and gills. Jinchuriki turned into chakra beings by sacrificing their skin and considerable blood. Elfman's transformation just didn't seem impressive to Naruto. Of course, his standards were different from everyone else, so some leeway had to be given. The transformation began with Elfman's muscled arms doubling in mass spontaneously. The morphing was unnatural, looking as though things had made their way within his body and were forcing his anatomy to expand in order to make room for itself. A similar event was taking place within his legs. They were steadily bulking up, taking on the appearance of a feline. Judging by the large paws that were forming in place of his feet, it seemed like those of big cats. His spiky white hair turned jet black and his nails sharpened to inch-long claws that were immediately buried within the earth, as his body convulsed in pain. Naraku's mocking laughter forced Naruto to remove his eyes from Elfman's transformation. The assassin mage was already backing away, leaving the lizard men he had brought to confront Naruto. My, the old man wasn't kidding when he said it would be potent. To think that only a shard of the demon lacrima would be enough to corrupt him. Naraku seemed to pause in thought, his chuckles silent for a moment before they resumed with greater enthusiasm. Oh, I see. Naruto shifted into a ready stance as he took a few steps back to keep both Naraku and Elfman in his sights. With Elfman in this state, he didn't feel like exposing his back towards him. If he was attacked, he would be forced to reveal some of his skills. What the hell did you do to him? He growled, channeling a good amount of chakra into Samahada. And what the heck is a demon lacrima? As expected by now, Naraku just released some more dramatic chuckles that echoed in the area. Do you really expect me to tell you? Such stupid naivety. If you want to find answers, search for them yourself, he said as he turned his back to Naruto, not deeming him dangerous at the moment. As to what I did to him, Naraku's ruby eyes turned to gaze into Naruto's crimson-slit eyes, smoldering with a fire that rivaled those of Obito and Kisame. Naruto could see the substantial amount of power that Naraku's eyes exuded. They were the eyes of someone who had the power to ensure that their goals were achieved. In some ways, they resembled his own eyes. The similarities were few, but they existed. The differences, on the other hand, were distinctly obvious. I suppose you could say that I awakened his true instincts. Naraku smirked at the creeping irritation in Naruto's eyes. Farewell, little fairy. Pray that we don't meet again, for the next time will be your last. With that said, a purple miasma cloud was expelled from within his cloak that hid his form entirely from Naruto, or so he thought. Naruto could see his adversary hide within the foliage 10 meters away from them. He grimaced at the thought of fighting someone as calculating and cunning as Orochimaru again. Samahata, do you mind eating that demon lacrima thing in Elfman? Samahata was silent for a moment before she gave her answer. Theoretically, I should be able to do so. I'm not sure how long it will take, but I'm positive that I can consume at least half of the foreign magic in his body. Naruto nodded minutely and dropped her to the ground just as the lizard man finally grew impatient and charged at him. Do it, he whispered to his blade. Samahata's bandages came undone as she used the chakra boost from Naruto to unleash her true self. The scales that were usually hidden from sight and keeping her in a sword form literally exploded into view, and her large, demented mouth was exposed for all to see. Naruto knew the risk involved in his gamble. Allowing Naraku to get even a glimpse of Samahata's abilities was not appealing to Naruto. However, all that Naraku would see would be her energy absorption talents. If he found those useful, since Naruto wasn't sure if there was any magic that could replicate the effect, Samahata would not allow anyone but him to wield her. Those spiky barbs of hers freaking hurt. They fucking hurt like hell. Despite the lack of limbs to allow movement, Samahata easily slithered through the approaching lizardmen, who ignored her in favor of Naruto for some reason. Reaching the transforming boy, she sank her serrated fangs into his flesh and began to shave off the energy being expelled from his body. Meanwhile, Naruto had already slid into the Hyuga Taijutsu style and waited patiently for the nearest creature to engage him. As they neared him, shouting out garbled war cries, he let his inquisitive mind get to work analyzing their speed and evaluating their reflexes. Whilst the lizard man was still in the process of completing its rotation, Naruto had already landed 4 lightning-fast taps to its outstretched leg. Having the skills of Hyuga Hayashi, Hyuga Niji and Hyuga Hinata made it possible for him to target 4 vital joints that caused the ligaments supporting the bone to collapse. As a result, the bone would suddenly and painfully slide out of its framework and effectively cripple his opponents. Not even bothering to pay attention to the cries of the lizard man as it landed heavily on the wounded limb, Naruto rushed towards the next batch. Their strikes were good, fast and coordinated, such that Naruto mused that any other person would have suffered a bruise or so from them. Shifting his body at the last possible moment to avoid their blows, Naruto easily kept dodging their attacks and constantly forcing them to overextend themselves. After one particular opportunity arose, Naruto struck with a palm strike that literally liquidated that lizardman's heart. Sensing one approaching from behind, Naruto seamlessly switched from Juken to Goken, if only for the moment, and slammed his left foot right in the creature's lung. There was a loud cracking sound that reported the breakage of the lizardman's ribcage. Switching back to Juken form, Naruto shot a quick glance towards Elfman and let out a silent relieved sigh as he saw the changes steadily being reversed. I have to finish this quickly and deal with the puppeteer. He shifted into the required stance for the Hack Rokujian Show, 8 trigrams 64 palms, when he sensed a huge spike of energy approaching at high speeds. What the dash? Darkness stream! A large magic seal appeared directly underneath the remaining lizardmen. Multiple tendrils of darkness burst forth and enveloped them all. Mary Jane landed with the force of a raging bull and struck her hands in front of the darkness prison. Evil spark! Channeling a decent amount of magic into her hands, she thrust them towards their prison and released the electricity that had been building up. With Naraku. The Daiyukai of Death's Head Kaka sat atop a tree in the distance as he watched the blonde mage take on his lizardmen. The boy was skilled, very skilled in hand-to-hand combat if the display he had just seen was any indication of his ability. Naraku estimated the boy to be an expert in unarmed combat. He moved with the grace and fluidity of someone who spent a great deal of time training, and his physical strength was indeed impressive for someone of his age. However, the 13-year-old was no master. He had a few holes in his stance, and his reflexes needed some work. On the other hand, his weapon was a most intriguing sword he had ever seen. His eyes narrowed thoughtfully as he swiveled his head to better look at it. It has the ability to absorb magic? That certainly would be useful against certain individuals. Unfortunately, he didn't have any other information on the sword and was pressed for time. Had those factors been negated, he would have tried to attain the blade. No matter. There will always be another time to seize that blade. He smirked as he felt the other Strauss sibling heading towards their location. So little Mira finally appears now that I have a rough estimate of her capability. It's time I took my leave. He hopped off the tree branch and landed on the forest floor. But first, he drew power from another demon lacrima shard and focused. I should leave them one final challenge. A purple magic seal appeared in the air before him and Naraku cast his spell. Living magic, creation. With Naruto and Mary Jane. As the dust cloud whipped up by Mary Jane's spell died down, Naruto finally got a good look at her new appearance. Her eyes had become darker, and her eyelashes longer, with a dark, thin marking in a light zigzag style crossing her right eye vertically. Similar markings were present above her right breast and on both of her bare thighs. Her hair was wilder, jutting upwards and getting clear, with the front ponytail growing longer, and her ears enlarged, extending backwards and gaining pointed edges, bearing resemblance to those of elves. He could see she had also gained sharp canine teeth, and her lips covered in dark lipstick. Her forearms and hands received noticeable changes, becoming covered in scales, and each sprouting a fin-like protrusion on its outer side. She also grew a large, stocky tail, seemingly made of metal plates or scales, getting smaller and smaller near its end. Her clothes also changed. Her outfit was replaced by a dark, skimpy one-piece suit revealing her arms and legs, which was open on the front and the back, exposing most of her belly, wide cleavage and upper back too. Such cloth had lighter colored edges taking on spiky shapes, and her similarly spiky collar was tied around the neck by a cravat tie. Her shoulders were tied in some thin belts protruding from her one-piece suit, and her feet were covered by matching, high-heeled thigh-high boots, which were decorated by lighter motifs on their upper parts, taking on the shapes of jagged blades pointing downwards on the front of her legs, and on the lower parts, in correspondence to her ankles and feet. She also donned a pair of gauntlets covering the back parts of her transformed arms. Most importantly, though, was the fact that she looked several years older. If he had to estimate, she looked to be around 19 years. A goofy grin settled on his face. "I think I'm gonna have very pleasant dreams tonight." Mary Jane scowled heavily at the unconscious lizard men at her feet before she bounded towards Elfman, worry and concern shining in her eyes. As she neared his downed form, she caught sight of Samahata still feasting on the last traces of tainted magic in his body. Assuming the worst, she cried out to her younger brother. "Elfman! Wake up!" Samahata took that as her cue to leave, and she disengaged her fangs from his body, dropping him none too gently on the floor. He immediately began coughing violently, spewing out trace bits of saliva whilst he gingerly pushed himself up. By that time, Mary Jane had already reverted back to her human form and was soothingly rubbing his back to try and ease his discomfort. "Samahata, come. It's time we returned." Slithering back towards her master, the sentient blade found herself being picked up by the white-haired female. Mary Jane glared at the strange thing she was holding. Whatever had happened to her brother was surely due to this thing's actions, and she was determined to pound it into oblivion for harming her brother. "What the hell is this fuck? That hurts." Samahata's deadly barbs made their debut, becoming well acquainted with the inner workings of Mary Jane's left hand. They struck deep, probably going through her entire palm and out like a hot knife going through butter. Dropping the handle, Mary Jane winced as the barbs were pulled out of her palms. Great, just fucking great. To be fair, she was low on magic and exhausted from using her takeover spell. Satan's soul took a great deal of effort from her to activate and maintain, making it extremely taxing for her to use it more than twice in a day at her current levels. At the fact that her hands were seriously injured and in no condition to defend herself, she felt pretty justified in swearing loudly at nothing in particular. Naruto shook his head at her antics and strode towards her downed form. By now, Elfman was able to stagger to his feet and also made his way towards his sister. "Big sis, what happened to you?" he questioned as he noticed the mess that was her hand. His eyes narrowed and his tone grew angrier. "Who did this to you?" "I'll teach him what happens when he messes with us." Mary Jane and Elfman whipped their heads to see Naruto holding Samahata in his hands and scratching his head in a sheepish manner. "Do you mind waiting until I explain before you act?" Elfman hesitated for a moment before nodding as Mary Jane just shrugged. Naruto took his cue and set Samahata on the ground in front of them. "Samahata is a sentient blade that recently took a liking to me. Since then, all others who try to wield her end up paying for it." He wrinkled his nose at Mary Jane's hand. "Usually by blood. I should have told you about it, but I didn't think that situation would occur. That, and I don't really know you guys that well. Now, why don't I bandage Mirachan's hand and head back to the town?" Elfman looked like he was about to say something but was cut off by Mary Jane. "Hold up. First of all, why was your weird sword munching on Elfman in the first place? Secondly, why were you guys attacked by all those lizard men?" "Well, Elfman and I happened to run into a member of the Assassination Guild Death's Head Caucus. His name was Naraku." "Wait, you met the Daiokai of Death's Head Caucus?" Mary Jane interrupted with wide eyes. Naraku was an infamous member within that guild for completing over 300 assassination requests. If she were to compare him to fairy tales standards, he was most likely somewhere around the level of Gildart's Clive. Not a reassuring thought. Yeah, he brought the lizard men with him and managed to stab Elfman with something he called a demon lacrima shard. You wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you? Seeing their confusion, Naruto sighed once more. Figures he would use something extremely rare or at the very least, not well known. "I'm guessing you felt that change in Elfman's magic energy?" he asked. Mary Jane nodded as Naruto settled down to a crouch and began bandaging her hands using those of Samahata. Yeah, I just finished dealing with the Gorians in the northern sector when I first felt it, she replied. Naruto nodded as he continued his tale, Elfman also settling into a crouch to listen to what had occurred. He thrust the shard inside Elfman. It was way too fast for either of us to do anything to stop it. Well, that wasn't true, but some falsifying was necessary for his future plans. After that, Elfman began transforming into something and Naraku left. He probably expected those lizard men to take both of us down. Thanks for the save, by the way. She just shrugged and averted her eyes away, a very light dusting of pink on her cheeks. Don't mention it. You probably could have handled them on your own. Naruto shook his head. I still offer my thanks. Any help, no matter how large or small, should be rewarded with gratitude. Elfman jumped into the conversation. So why was your sword attacking me? I don't think I was going after you. He puzzled, looking comedic with his confused expression. Since the shard was infusing your body with its own magic, I had the idea of Samahata feeding on that tainted magic to bleed it dry. Even if it contained a large amount of energy, Samahata would shave that amount faster than it would be released into you. With that, Naruto finished bandaging Mirajane's left hand and rose to his feet. Dusting off his pants, he opened his mouth to say something but was interrupted by the appearance of an extremely large purple magic seal in the air. What the F? Warwork. Like a hologram being projected, a creature appeared from within the seal. It was twice as big as Elfman with large long arms, sprouting sharp claws, and covered in thick fur, with its abdominal and pectorals prominent in the middle. Its hair took on a mane-like appearance that reached the back of its knees, its ears and canine teeth become pointed, and it had a pair of striped horns pointing upwards, starting from a plate on its forehead. Its legs, much smaller in comparison to its large arms and torso, grew dark hooves, and also gained a pair of protrusions sprouting from their shoulders, similar in appearance to its horns. Hovering in the air beside the creature was Naraku himself. He gave the three of them a cheeky little wave before disappearing in a blur of motion. The monster roared once more before it started bearing down upon them with surprising speed. Naruto cursed before he scooped Mirajane with his left arm and grabbing Elfman with his right. Channeling chakra into his feet, Naruto jumped out of the creature's path and landed several feet away with no effort. Naraku was gone. Naruto couldn't sense his magic nearby and it wasn't possible to fool his new otherworldly senses. He could finish this quickly with ninjutsu, but Mirajane and Elfman were around. What would be the best thing to do? He turned to Mirajane. You wouldn't happen to have any ideas to take that thing down, would you? He asked. Knock it unconscious and I can handle the rest. Surprisingly, it was Elfman who spoke up. His eyes were hard and unflinching as if he was daring Naruto to disagree with his idea. No, Elfman. You can't perform the full body takeover just yet. You'll end up being overtaken by it. Mirajane glared at her brother, unwilling to let him go through with his plans. Naruto arched a brow despite keeping his eyes on the charging creature. Is there a problem with Elfman's takeover? He leaped away from the beast's furious dash, curious as to why it didn't try using its arms whenever he jumped away. It's probably operating on its base instincts, and can't utilize its limbs to their full effect. Landing smoothly, Naruto decided to give his own input. Mirajane, perhaps we should attempt Elfman's idea. He cut off her imminent objections with a well-timed cough. I know you care about your brother's well-being, but Elfman knows the risks and believes he can overcome them. I cannot say for sure, but his idea is the best we've got. But she protested weakly. If something does happen to him, you'll be there to help him through it. Believe in him. He set Elfman down and gave him an appraising look. He is your brother, after all. Elfman nodded his head in thanks as he began to gather the amount of magic necessary for his plan. Thank you, Naruto-san. Hearing such words from a real man makes me strive to do better than before. Naruto shook his head in amusement. So all I have to do is knock it out? He questioned as he began bouncing on the balls of his feet. Elfman's nod was all the confirmation he needed. With another burst of chakra, he was halfway towards the monster, which was also on its third charge attempt. Seeing that his eyes would be hidden from their view, Naruto willed his Byakugan to appear. His eyes transformed from their usual red slits to white ones, with a tinge of pale lavender. Stopping 5 feet away from the charging beast, Naruto settled in the Juken stance for the second time in the day. You are within my range. He waited patiently for the beast to approach him, nostalgia flitting through his mind. In his eyes, the monster was replaced by the image of the old Uzumaki Naruto. It amused him greatly at how ironic the situation was. He and the beast had taken the roles of Neji and Naruto respectively. Now like back then. The beast was less than a meter away when Naruto finally moved. Hakanai Sho, 8 trigrams, 2 palms. 2 consecutive strikes stopped it cold in its tracks. Yan Sho, 4 palms. Another 2 strikes found their marks on the beast's flesh, making the total count 4 strikes. Hachi Sho 8 palms. Jiroku Sho 16 palms. Sanju and I Sho 32 palms. Blow upon blow rained upon the creature with unerring precision and speed, after images forming and further enhancing the illusion of Naruto growing arms to attack it. Finally nearing the end of his technique, Naruto landed the final blow, and walked past the frozen beast with his hands in his pockets. When he stood back to back with the creature, he silently finished the name of the technique. Hakurokujian Sho, 8 trigrams 64 palms. As though a silent trigger, the beast slammed into the ground in blissful unconsciousness. In no time at all, the sounds of footsteps announced Elfman's approach. Turning to face the youth, Naruto let out a chuckle at the awestruck face Elfman had. Not that I mind you basking in the awesomeness that is me, but don't you have a job to do? Elfman grew serious, and knelt beside the unconscious beast and concentrated. Take over! A bright light began to radiate off Elfman as he absorbed and copied the power of the beast. Naruto watched with interest at the display whilst Mary Jane looked on in hope and concern. The light grew brighter as Elfman began to grow taller and more muscular. When the light finally died down, there was Elfman in the beast's form, the only difference being the white hair and tattered pants. Elfman? Mira called gently. Elfman, do you hear me? Elfman looked down at his sister and their third teammate before a smile made its way onto the takeover mage. I knew I could do it, he said, grinning happily. Naruto tilted his head. So long as you believe in yourself, you can achieve whatever goal you set your sights on. Despite his words, he had already activated his Sharingan, and the likely outcome that Elfman lost control of the beast. Taking chances was not something he took lightly. Mary Jane wrapped her arms around Elfman and let out a relieved sigh. I was afraid you weren't going to make it. What you did was very reckless, and could have easily blown up in your face. Don't ever scare me like that again, you hear me? Elfman chuckled. Sure thing. Now I can finally be as strong as everyone else, and he stopped mid-sentence as he dropped to one knee and began clutching his head. He began to thrash around and let out a beastly roar that sounded throughout the forest. Naruto grit his teeth and made his choice. I'll have to reveal my Sharingan to Mira-chan. She's already seen me subdue Acnologia, and we are the only ones here. As Mira Jane backed away from her deranged brother, Naruto strode forwards and locked eyes with Beast Elfman. The Sharingan's final commonly used ability is capable of inducing a unique brand of hypnosis that involves suggesting actions and thoughts to the opponent through genjutsu cast by simple eye contact between both parties. As an experienced user of the Sharingan, and having the wealth of experience from the strongest Uchiha in history as well as insights into its weaknesses from other shinobi, it was child's play for Naruto to suppress the consciousness of the beast within Elfman. Within the space of a second, Elfman's bestial eyes gained their human awareness, and he took a step back as he looked at Naruto in a new light. You managed to subjugate the beast. Mary Jane was also in a similar state of shock. It was as though each time Naruto revealed something about himself, instead of providing answers, it drew up new questions that left her more than a little confused. Naruto-kun, what happened? What did you just do? For a moment, Naruto gave no response, and the fringe of his hair covered his eyes. What I'm about to tell you is a secret that Master Makarov and I want to keep for a while longer. If you want to know, he gazed at them with his Sharingan rotating hypnotically, pulsating with power and authority. You must promise to never reveal this without mine or Master's permission. Seeing them nod solemnly, Naruto began to talk. Chapter 8, The Aftermath. The trip back to Everloom Mansion was quiet. The three fairy tale mages were all silent, each lost in their own thoughts in the aftermath of Naruto's revelation. To say they were shocked would be an understatement. Elfman was back in his human form, seemingly fine but still willing to seek medical assurance before heading back to the guild. His clothes were ripped and littered with blood, dust as well as a bit of foliage. He and Mary Jane had drifted away from their blonde companion, who was ahead of them by a few feet, trying to sort out their thoughts. Elfman's eyes strayed over to Naruto's back, questions burning in his mind. Such a frightening magic, however, it could help in my own ambitions. He tightly clenched his fists as he recalled the strength of the beast's instincts. That brief moment, he had lost control. The creature, even when unconscious and taken over by Elfman, had been a force to be reckoned with. Had Naruto not suppressed its consciousness at the time he did, Elfman shuddered to imagine the outcome. If Naruto could help me control my magic, this wouldn't happen again. I refuse to be weak, I have to get stronger. His clear blue eyes hardened with immense determination and resolve, in order to protect my sisters. Mary Jane was also deep in thought. She was recalling the first time she met Naruto. That dragon had been ready to attack anything and everything in its sight, yet the minute Naruto lay his eyes on it became as frightening as a statue. So that was how he subdued it, she realized. She wasn't as well versed in the different types of magic in the world as the Master or Urza, but she could recall a kind of eye magic that allowed one to project images into the minds of others. Naruto's own, something he admitted was largely unknown to him, was just as deadly as Master's light magic. If it's so dangerous, yet still in its infant stages, her eyes narrowed as a thought took shape. His magic could be a lost magic like Natsu's Dragon Slayer magic. Ahead of them, Naruto continued to make his way towards the mansion to receive the payment for the job request. Revealing the Sharingan to Elfman and Mary Jane was a gamble, but he had managed to impress the importance of its secrecy to them. He hadn't told them everything about it. The only things he mentioned were its ability to predict moves, cast illusions and copy attacks, the general abilities each Sharingan user had at their disposal when in the Two-Tomo stage. Thankfully, he could use Kamui using his normal Sharingan, something that Obito had managed to do in his former life, since he had no intention of revealing any secrets pertaining to the evolved stages of his dojutsu. His eyes snapped to attention as Everloom Mansion loomed in the distance. Let's see, there was a note about being paid for the number of monsters we put down. He cocked his head and thought. I definitely killed 8 Gorians in the forest, another 2 lizard men before Mira Jane appeared, and that's about it, I guess. So that means I should be paid 2,200,000 jewels. Not bad for my first job request. Approaching the gates, Naruto's good mood at the prospect of earning his money increased when he saw Duke Everloof's profile through a window. That guy must be seriously loaded to afford all that. Now I'm definitely gonna steal everything of value he has. Even better, I get to kill him without anyone having leads towards me. Let it not be said that Naruto didn't find the use of the Rinnegan extremely satisfying. With a new spring in his step, Naruto headed through the gates of the mansion and continued through it until he reached the library. He paused, waiting for his teammates to catch up to him before entering. They were only a minute behind him, giving him enough time for Naruto to create a Kage Bunshin and transform it into a spider. The clone's Rinnegan eyes connected its eyes with Naruto's, and it quickly crawled under the door and across the carpet, getting into a good position to kill Everloo without any problems. Footsteps made their way towards Naruto, and he gave the siblings an amused look. What took you guys so long? Weren't you the one who complained about me being late? Mary Jane frowned. Yeah, laugh it up. When I'm back to 100%, I'll make you pay for that remark. However, both she and Naruto knew she wasn't going to do anything to him. It was more of a reflex than anything. From what he had observed of her, Mira had a reputation she wanted to uphold, and from the whispers he had heard the guild members make earlier in the day, it was one heck of a reputation. He shrugged and twisted the door handle. Whatever. Entering the library, the group got right in Everloo's face. He was still seated in that comfortable-looking sofa of his and was reading a large book with a picture of an incredibly ugly woman as the cover. If that wasn't bad enough, the woman was nude. Sweat drops formed on each of them as Everloo let out a perverted chuckle. The fuck? Coughing loudly, Naruto clicked his tongue as Everloo finally noticed he wasn't alone. He quickly hid his book and gave them a look. Yes? I suppose you're here to admit your failure to deal with them. That doesn't surprise me. Fairy Tail was said to be the most unreliable guild in Magnolia. Mary Jane and Elfman bristled while Naruto just tuned him out. The guy wasn't going to live for much longer, so why allow himself to be baited by his words? Actually, we've dealt with them and ready to receive our pay. Since you added that each monster was worth 2,200,000 jewels, my bill will be 2,200,000 jewels. Elfman, he gestured towards the tall white-haired boy, he took down 7 monsters, so his pay should be 1,540,000 jewels. Mary Jane. He paused and turned to face her. How many did you take care of? She shrugged. About 24 or so. Naruto nodded and turned back to the rapidly paling Duke. Yeah, so you have to pay her 5,280,000 jewels. That is, if you actually have that amount of money. He finished. After all, if you don't pay us, people are gonna start gossiping about the richest man in the town not having enough money to pay for the incentive he placed in his own job request. Mages won't accept your requests because you would be known as someone who didn't give a crap about settling his dues, but hey, no pressure. Everloo felt like slamming his head into a wall. Why had he put that notice inside his request again? Sure, it's some town. The trio walked away from Everloom Mansion with their pockets considerably heavier. Elfman had gotten a change of clothes. He now wore a large striped shirt, which had alternating colors, and an exact copy of his pants along with brand new sandals. The group stepped into the Shiritsum station and booked a train to Magnolia. When he felt they were a suitable distance away from the mansion, Naruto's clone crept towards Everloo. The bastard was asleep at the moment, with his bodyguards on their lunch break and his servants away in town. The clone dispelled the transformation and quickly activated his Rinnegan. Grabbing the man's dangling arm, the clone pulled Duke Everloo's soul using the abilities of the human path. Assimilating the soul took a while, but the clone was able to successfully extract all information regarding his riches and merchandise. Unfortunately, he would have to pose as Everloo for a while before he died of natural causes. Transforming into Everloo, Naruto's clone let out a perverted chuckle as thoughts of the Duke's more normal maids being under his control appeared. Hey, it wasn't like the boss would mind. Magnolia. Naruto sighed dramatically as he and Mary Jane walked through the streets of Magnolia. Elfman had been admitted into a magical hospital, i.e. a hospital specially designed to treat mages. They still needed the go-ahead from the doctors if Elfman was going to be alright. After all, they weren't even sure what a demon lacrima was in the first place. Naruto had his own suspicions of what the demon lacrima could do. It was similar to the cursed seal Orochimaru slapped onto his desired vassal in the sense that it gave the user a boost in strength and a darker shade to their energy. Anything else was nothing more than bits of ideas that were more than likely wrong. Makarov might know about this demon lacrima. It would be best to know more about it now than later. His eyes narrowed imperceptibly as he recalled Naraku's smirking visage. I'll also need to find more information on that guy. Someone with such a reputation can't be underestimated. Mary Jane bumped Naruto's side using her hip. Don't act like such a drama queen. You should be proud of yourself. Most newbies don't ever get over 2 million jewels on their first few jobs. Well, I still haven't found a place to stay for Setsuna, and so excuse me for being a little dramatic, he dryly said. Avoiding Mary Jane's half-hearted swipe, he grabbed her and made a twirl with his hands kept firmly on her waist. The blush that lighted her face instigated a bout of merry chuckles from him. Mary Jane swatted his arm, which was looped around her shoulders, and shot him a look. What was that for? What? I can't tease my new friend like that. No, you can't. Bummer. Mary Jane shook her head at his antics, ignoring the fact that she was smiling. I haven't been this comfortable with any guy I know. Thinking back to her male friends, the one she was closest to would probably be Laxus, and even he had his moments of stupidity. From what she had seen, Naruto was much more laid back and fun than Laxus, but could also get serious when the situation called for it. Naruto's not a bad guy to hang out with. Maybe I'll go on another request with him, she thought. Say, Naruto, he lazily shifted his eyes to her, the only indication that he was paying attention. There was something in her voice, a hidden emotion that piqued his interest. Mary Jane was loud, rude, condescending, and usually expressive regarding what she had to say, so what could possibly make her sound so quiet? I just wanted to say. She took in a deep breath and grabbed him into a hug. Now that wasn't enough to surprise Naruto, but he was pretty difficult to surprise. Any reason why I'm being rewarded? His voice was low and questioning as his hands reciprocated her action. Mary Jane lightly slapped his arm even as she felt her face heat up. Bibaka. I'm just thanking you, for helping Elfman back there, she murmured out, still leaning into his embrace. She could see quite a number of civilian folk going wide-eyed at her situation, but she was too content to make a scene. They must know about me. If I didn't know any better, I would say they look like we were being naughty in public. For his part, Naruto was able to keep his cool when the topic of Elfman came up. True, he was feeling some guilt at how he allowed Elfman's condition to happen, but he had committed even worse acts to the extent that Elfman's plight would be seen as something insignificant. Before he met Setsuna, it had been a habit of his to practice his espionage and manipulation skills on various people: daimyos, simple merchants, the remaining samurai in Tetsuno Kuni, the other minor hidden villages, and many others had their lives worsened or brighter because of his actions towards them. Having a large amount of Obito's personality, it wasn't hard for him to gain an obsession with collecting various powerful items. The brains and chakra of the 5 Kage he had taken them as soon as he was able to get a handle on his new body. The Rikudo Sannin no Hogu, treasured tools of the Sage of Six Paths, from Kumo were also stolen by him. The Forbidden Scroll of Konoha, the Raijin no Ken, the Dragon Summoning Scroll of Yuzushiogakyu, the list went on. Yeah, I'm glad I could help, but we need to get stronger. This mission just showed me how lucky we were against that guy. If something like that happens again, we might not make it out alive. He softly spoke, slowly rubbing circles on Myra's back. It was something he had developed when Setsuna came into his life. Right now, though, we should enjoy ourselves for surviving. Then, we train until we're strong enough to protect our precious people. Precious people? Mary Jane asked, drawing back to look at Naruto in the face. Naruto nodded. It's something a friend taught me before he died. An understanding light appeared in Mary Jane's eyes, and Naruto continued. He believed that when a person has something important they want to protect, that's when they become truly strong. Mary Jane immediately thought of her siblings as she took in his words. Other images began to form behind them. Makarov, Kana, Laxus, Mikao, Natsu, Wakaba, Gray, even Urza was amongst her list. Do you have a precious person? Once. She died a few years ago. No more was said as they withdrew from their embrace. Thought Naruto still had his arm around Mary Jane's shoulders. The gates of Fairy Tail came into view, a welcome sight for both mages, mage and shinobi, and Mary Jane slid out of Naruto's hold. Come on. Lee-Sana must be pretty worried about us, and I'm sure that redhead bitch is back. She mock-snarled. A raised brow was all she received. Just why do you hate each other so much? Whenever you two meet, It's like you're on opposite sides of a war. A thought struck him. Are you guys in denial lesbians? To see Mary Jane stumble in surprise was something that Naruto would come to appreciate. She caught her footing and whirled around with a horror-struck face. What the fuck are you talking about? I'm straight, damn it. She raised her fist at him, scowling heavily at the insinuation that she and Urza were into each other. Even if I was, there's no way I'd go after that hussy even if I was paid to do so. Naruto raised his hands in surrender. It was just a thought, no need to bite my head off. He muttered as they entered the guild. Makarov's office. Makarov was happy. The more troublesome members, Natsu, were away on a job request, meaning the guild was much quieter than it normally was. The Magic Council hadn't bothered him ever since he handed in his report, and his beer sponsor had been kind enough to even give them twice as much beer as they ordered. Laxus was still in his attitude phase though, the only thing that marred his day. Well, that and Naruto's earlier stunt, he admitted. No matter how many times he remembered it, he still found it a mouthful to digest. It's hard to believe that the day isn't over just yet. Makarov was shaken out of his thinking by the raps on his door. Grumbling incoherently, he gave himself a one-over before shouting, "Come in, it's open!" Naruto entered the office just as a shriek sounded off in the guild bar. He paid no attention to it whilst Makarov groaned and slapped his palm onto his face. Of all the times, why now? It was so nice and peaceful without those two fighting. I take it that they've been like this since they met? Naruto asked as he settled into the seat opposite Makarov. Makarov frowned as he picked himself up. Unfortunately. I wonder if they ran afoul of each other before they ended up here. That would certainly explain their complicated relationship. Well, I'm not here to talk about Urza-san and Mirachan's rivalry. He leaned forward to peer into Makarov's eyes. Something happened during our job request that left me worried. Tell me, what do you know of Naraku and the devil Lacrima? Makarov whitened. You run into Naraku? And you're still alive? Remarkable. He blew 0 UT harshly as he gripped his hands. Were you in any danger? His voice was controlled, but Naruto could detect the worry and concern for his children in it. Then again, Naruto had inadvertently made his fears more justified. After all, he had depicted himself as a seasoned chunin during their first talk. Elfman had a shard of the demon Lacrima embedded within him, but Samahata managed to consume all the tainted magic before it could seriously affect him. Unfortunately, his takeover magic might be even more difficult to control, Naruto stated. Makarov closed his eyes. Elfman must have been hit pretty badly by that news. Spending so much time trying to catch up to his sisters only to have his hard work destroyed in an instant, it makes my heart ache in sympathy. Naruto scratched his cheek as he mentally reviewed all he wanted to say. I didn't say that my analysis was accurate. I may have made a mistake in my diagnostics. Regardless, I was wondering if Elfman's problem was more to do with him than the difficulty of the takeover spell. Naruto made a hand sign and Makarov's wooden desk began to strain, as though something was trying to come out of it. I see that you've felt the effects of my Mokuton. Would release. Naruto's voice broke the spell that Makarov found himself under and drew his attention. I was planning on helping Elfman train his takeover by acting as a control in case he loses himself to the spell. With a quick pulse of chakra, the branch disintegrated just as quickly as it was created. But first, please enlighten me on the demon Lacrima Naraku made mention of. Makarov nodded, idly stroking his beard. All right. I'll tell you about that cursed item. Physically, it is a sphere that appears to be made of some crystalline material that changes color according to the wishes of those that use it. Much of the demon Lacrima's origins are shrouded in mystery. I can only warn you of its abilities, he warned. Naruto shrugged. I didn't expect anything more than that. Still, any knowledge is worth more than gold at the moment. Anyway, the demon Lacrima has the power to grant immense power unto whoever wields it. Even a shard of it is enough to boost a being's power twofold. With enough shards, even the weakest mage would have more than enough power to use lost magic without the issue of any health risks. Not only is it capable of giving power, but it can also bestow one wish to whoever manages to find it. His eyes locked onto Naruto's. If Naraku is searching for the pieces of the demon Lacrima, then we must make preparations. Naraku is a very deadly enemy, Naruto. Even my former master was unable to emerge victorious in their bouts. Naruto nodded and stood up. Turning towards the door, he gave a small wave. I'd like to spend more time talking, but I still need to find a place for Setsuna and I to sleep. I'll talk to you later, Ji-san. Magnolia. Setsuna and Naruto followed the short and stout man that had claimed to own one of the best, if not the best, apartment in Magnolia. The journey took about 5 minutes from the guild and was located in the heart of the town, allowing easy access to and from the guild as well as the various stores of Magnolia. As soon as the man finished showing them around, Naruto cast a genjutsu to make him think they had paid the initial payment as well as that for the next 3 months. Making sure that the man was long gone, Naruto turned to Setsuna. Why don't we rest today and work on what needs to be done to the apartment tomorrow? She nodded minutely. Hi. It would be best for us to rest while we still can. Naruto nodded as well. Before that, he made the seals for the summoning jutsu and slammed his hands on the floor. A large cloud of smoke appeared as Naruto stood tall once again. I need to start setting up a new spy system in this world. Thankfully, we have the best person for the job. He smiled as the smoke disappeared, revealing Naruto's human path. It's been a while, Ero Sanin. What if Kami sends Naruto to Fairy Tail? And thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoyed this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel, and leave a like if you guys need the next part. Comment down, and thanks for watching the video, and see you guys in the next video.